What is up, guys? It is the Sportster Bradley Walker, and welcome to the Walker Report, part of NGSC Sports. Guys, remember the website. It's ngscsports.com for all your current sports content. We are also part of Snowman Multimedia Sports, Game Winners Sports Network, that's G-Dubs Network, and Mancini Media. Welcome in, guys. Happy Thursday. If everyone survived the NFL draft last week. Guess what, guys? We have Team NBS senior NFL draft analyst Jeff Barnes rejoining us. It was on 2 weeks ago to preview the draft. Now he's going to review the draft with us this evening. And guys, like I said, guys, happy Thursday. Hopefully everyone out there is good as we have now turned the calendar to the 5th month of the year. Wow, year's going by quick. I want to give a quick shout out before I get into my sponsors. Adam, get better, buddy. I know he's not feeling very well. I know he was not unable to go tonight. So feel better, bud. I'll see you in a couple weeks when I see you in North Carolina. Anyway, guys, we are sponsored by CreatingZenSpaces.com. It is the local choice in St. Petersburg, Florida for house cleaning, organization, decluttering, and pet sitting. It's about finding the peace within you and adding comfort to your life. Remember, guys, Zen Spaces begins with you. Be kind to yourself and one another. We are also sponsored by Garrett's. Illuminate your inner self, shatter the trending norms, and open up your world to a newfound level of confidence and admiration. Garrett's Designer Jewelry and Luxury Accessories at garretts.com. We are also sponsored by funwags.com. It is a pet treat company. It is a pet treat company and also has birthday items for dogs and cats. We cater to dogs, cats, and rabbits and rodents as well. Most of our treats are universal between dogs and cats. And we also have a low-calorie vegetable treat for pets that need to be on a special diet. The company Funwag started at the end of 2021 and started its full-fledged in 2022 as one of the three mascots of the company are Zoe, Roxy, and Odin. Zoe and Roxy are dogs. Odin is a rabbit. What happened is on the night of December 27th, 2021, Zoe had some bad treats at a local event in Dunedin, Florida, not too far from me, guys, only about a 15, 20-minute drive from where I live, that caused her to have stomach issues and become sick. At this point, my friend Sophie, her mom, decided to open up her new own pet treat company, and voila, we have Funwags. It is about natural ingredients and preservatives. The majority of the ingredients listed are 3 to 5 items, and they're all that you can pronounce. Funwags is made with love and care for all your fur babies because, guys, at the end of the day, they deserve the best. Let me welcome in my two co-hosts before I bring on Mr. Barnes. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Mr. Bradley.
How you guys doing today?
I'm hanging in there after getting about maybe 6 hours of sleep. I'm here doing what I do.
Man. I'm happy you got some sleep, Drew. I saw earlier today on the chat that you were going to bed, so I'm happy you got some sleep.
Yeah, after fighting with the dog with the dog.
Gotcha. And Lou, before we bring Jeff on, I got to talk to you about your Rangers. What happened?
Okay. Well, I knew it was going to go 7 games, but the Devils have more firepower in them. And it's like, Game 5, the Rangers look flat. But the coach Joe Gallant said, "Oh, we played our best game. I think we played our best game with a player." Like, how can you say you had your best game of players when you got shot 4-0 and got outshot 20-2? You were better in Game 4, and then you said Game 6. You said Game 6 was bad, and said Game 7 was just down the tubes. I think Joe Gallant needs to have his head examined for one thing. So,
I watched Game 7, and the whole second period, the Devils dominated that whole period. Yeah. It was, I think that was kind of like the period that destroyed them, Luke. Was that period right there?
When they didn't score in the first period at all, I was expecting, a very defensive, low-scoring game.
Yeah,
because you figure, it all comes down to who has the gas left in the tank when you get to this point. Because you gotta be running everywhere on all cylinders when you get to this point. Of course, it's not as much a clap saying that the Bruins losing in Game 7 at the last minute when you had the game in hand and won, and then all of a sudden.
That didn't hurt my feelings at all. I'm so happy Good for
I'm
Florida.
like, how the hell did this happen?
And Florida's up
Well-
1 game then over Toronto, so that's even better.
Well, I'll just put the words of Vince Scully. You see the improbable, the impossible has happened.
Correct.
My apologies to Vince Scully fans everywhere.
Art, rest in peace. One of the best in the business to ever call
I'm
games.
do Howard Cosell.
So him too.
Never
Red
mind.
Barber. You can go down the list.
For my time.
John Buck. All of them. All of them are good.
Just don't say Joe Buck, please.
I know. I said John. I didn't say his son. I said John. Jack.
Leave Joe Buck on there. Joe Buck is annoying as you know what.
Yeah.
He's on ESPN now, so that's
Good.
It makes it even worse.
he's on ESPN now. Yeah, he's on the Full Weather Network. All right, guys. Let's welcome in MBS Senior Draft Analyst Jeff Barnes. Jeff, how you doing, sir?
Not bad. How's everybody this evening?
Good.
All right.
Welcome back, Jeff. Glad to have you
Thank
back.
you. Thank you
Right.
very much.
Oh, that's right. You were here before. I forgot. I remember.
Yeah,
now.
2 weeks ago.
You're getting the
Yeah,
well-rested version of me this time.
Okay. Fine.
So, Jeff, tell us. I mean, what was your overall thoughts on how the draft went? I was reading up, and I got some. I'll ask you some questions too about it. But it looked like everybody was given a good grade in the draft this year, which is shocking. Not everyone either got an A or a B. No one got below a B minus from what I've seen. So, yeah, I mean, what did you think about how the draft went?
Well, it was really hard to screw this one up. I mean, there were teams that tried. Don't get me wrong; they tried their best. But this class was so deep because we've had it for a couple of years now. Next year will be the end of it. The extended year because of all the kids with the COVID year. So a lot of kids that came back for an extra year that would normally be gone. So we had talent that you had high in this draft. We're sitting around in round 6 and 7, day 3, talking about how is this guy still here? How has he not been drafted? So it was really hard for teams to screw this up because there was talent up and down the board. They were fighting over guys after the draft. The only way you could screw this up was to purposely pick guys that, one, didn't fit your team, two, weren't value for the pick that you had, or just plain and simple, you just didn't want to win. But for the most part, everybody did a good job. Like I said, were teams that you had to question some of the picks, but even the picks they got were still good pick players. It's just you question the timing of said pick.
And what was your take on Will Levis not going until day 2?
I think he fell the way he's supposed to be.
Okay.
I didn't like the first round, talk of Will Levis, especially at the top of the board. If you watch the film, you didn't see a first round quarterback. And I know certain analysts, I'm not going to mention names, were upset that he didn't go round 1. Unfortunately, if you watch a quarterback that plays in the SEC, that plays against FBS opponents, can't throw for 300 yards, goes 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions versus Tennessee, the same defense that Spencer Rattler and Stetson Bennett lit up, which is an above average defense. They're not great by any standards. You have to question them. 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions versus FBS opponents. His gaudy numbers came against FCS opponents. So you had to really look at all of that. Look at the film. You see the same bad throws at the combine that you saw on his film. So you had to be reinforced with the negatives of him and say this is not a first-round quarterback. There were guys who were first-round quarterbacks that went. I was as shocked as anybody to see Richardson go at 4. But if you had the choice between Richardson, Levis, and, of course, the kid from Tennessee,
Hendon
Hooker. I would have gone with Richardson too because at least Richardson will be available when you get to camp. Has the highest upside higher upside than Levis. Hendon Hooker is 2 years away, and there's a reason why he fell to round 3. He's going to be dealing with the injury for most of this year, so he probably won't be back till midway or 3/4 of the way through the season. And then you still have to get him pro ready, which is another year in itself. So basically 2 years on Hendon Hooker. The lowest upside of the 3 is Levis. So you had to go with Richardson.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I just hope
Pocket.
Jeff overall that Richardson does well, because like I said 2 weeks ago, it seems like every Florida quarterback doesn't do very well in the NFL, and there were a lot of them, and even me. Like I went to the USF game last year in the Swamp, and when they announced that he was going to the draft, I learned a lot of Florida Gator, because I keep up with the Gators too, because I'm a Gator fan plus a Bull. They were all like, "What? This kid? What? You need another year in college. There's no way you're going to make it in the pros." So hopefully he proves us all wrong, and I mean he can help the Indianapolis Colts. I think they have the weapons for him. And I agree with you with the Hendon Hooker thing. I think him going to Detroit, I think he'll have to sit back a couple years and, let him develop a little bit, let him get over that ACL injury. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Who out of everyone, Jeff, who did you have as who are your highest grades? Like, which team do you think blew it out of the water, in the draft overall for the 2 or 3 days that the draft is?
Well, how could you not have a love affair with Philadelphia's draft class? I mean, they stepped in it. Every time you turned around, you were picking somebody and going.
You mean the Georgia Bulldogs, right?
Yeah,
Right?
They're basically becoming Georgia North. With all the Georgia guys they've taken the past 2 years. But I mean, to get Kaylee Ringo in round 3, you get Carter at 9. You only have to move up one spot to get him, which is something in itself. But then to turn around, you turn around and get another Bulldog pass rusher. It was your second pick in the first round. You get Ringo in the third, and you go through all of the picks. It's just a bunch of guys that you look at and go, how did they end up with this guy? A lot of these guys should have been off the board already. This was a no-brainer. A lot of these guys should have been off the board. The fact that Ringo lasted until day 3 with the run of corners we saw. I mean, the cornerbacks flew off the board. By the time we got to the end of the draft, we were pulling names out of hats of guys that we had barely draftable grades on. So the cornerback had a huge run in this draft through 7 rounds. But to get Ringo in the third with all of the guys, I'm a huge Emmanuel Forbes fan. He was my 5th ranked corner. For him to go second was shocking to me. For Porter to fall day 2 was shocking to me. So, you look at Philadelphia's draft, amazing. There's a lot of teams had some great drafts. I think the Ravens had a darn good draft. You look at their off-season acquisitions. You look at the class that they picked up. Value for every pick, talent that's going to fit. Zay Flowers, an explosive slot player that's going to work out for those guys. Trenton Simpson, a linebacker, fits right into what they want to do. Tavis Robinson, edge rusher. It's going to come in and give them some youth on the edge. Caillou Blue Kelly from Stanford, the guy that's going to fit right into their scheme. So you go down this list, and they only had about 6 picks. But to come back at the end of all of these picks, Andrew Voorhees. If it wasn't for the injury, this guy goes at the latest day 2. So there are so many guys that they got in this draft, and he said 6 guys here, plus the guys they picked up afterwards. I believe they were one of the teams that put in an offer for Isaiah Bowser here at UCF. So another guy that could possibly bring into that backfield that will contribute, because you have of course J.K. Dobbins at the top of their depth chart, Gus Edwards. So they love to run the football. They're still built to run the football, but you have 2 excellent tight ends. They now have 2 very good receivers in Bateman and, of course, Odell Beckham Jr. And now you add Zay Flowers to that mix. You still have Devin Duvernay and James Prochet with a more open offense, as opposed to a Baltimore Ravens, or a team who didn't have teams, but they made the best out of every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought Lamar back, which was the key point. I think the key tipping point to bring their quarterback back, I think was huge. I was just watching ESPN right before we got on here, and they were talking. Todd Monken is their offensive coordinator, only with Georgia, and he likes to run the 2 tight end scheme. So, like you were just saying, Jeff, they drafted tight ends, or they have tight ends on the roster already. So be prepared for them to run the 2 tight end set. Yes. They're going to spread you out. Who was the wide receiver that they drafted from Boston College?
That's Zay Flowers.
Flowers, yeah.
Zay Flowers.
So they're gonna spread you out. I really honestly can say now they probably are the favorite in the AFC North. I would have to say they have to be the best team in the division. I mean, Pittsburgh's on the build again. Cincinnati, we'll see. I mean, if they can keep Joe Burrow upright, they have a shot. And Cleveland that's a whole different story.
Forget Cleveland.
Yeah, that's a whole different. I'll before I let G-Dub and Lou and Alex ask you, I got to ask just two more things I want to say. What was your take on the Bucs draft? What was your take on the Patriots draft? Because I'm a Patriot and a Bucs fan.
No problem. I think the Bucs did well. One thing about the Bucs is they tend to fall back in the first round, but when they do that, they do very well on day 2 and day 3. They did very well on day 2 and day 3. Adding Kancey in the first round was a shock to me. I thought they would go offensive tackle. They're not defensive tackle, but going defensive tackle, adding the athletic, explosive defensive tackle to their front is something that they needed. They got kind of big and plotting when they had Hicks and Vita Vea in the middle. All right, so adding him kind of gives them a little juice inside. You're not getting that. You still have Shaq Barrett on the outside. You still have Joe Tryon, Shawinko on the outside. So different dynamic there. Something that they haven't had really since Sue. So I think that's a big help.
Warren Sapp.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
sorry, Jeff. Love
That's
your
all right.
stuff. Sorry, just to build on your point, man. I mean, during the draft buildup, I mean, the Bucs young interior lineman that they drafted, man, they were saying, hey, this guy could be kind of shades of Warren Sapp.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you get an interior lineman that can get in that backfield a lot quicker than a big plotter. Priceless.
Yeah, and granted, they tend to run more the odd front than the even front, but you're going to see him in that similar shade to how Sapp was. He'll probably play what they consider the end position, but he'll be more in that inside 4, that outside 3 technique, where he's going to be more guard tackle gap as opposed to being outside the tackle. They'll move him around to try and draw a couple of different matchups with him, but it definitely adds some more pop in life to that defensive front, which is going to help them a lot. It's going to help them immensely. It's running the football, because he's an excellent run stuffer from the inside as far as destroying the inside run, and he'll chase some outside runs down as well. So he's definitely going to help them with the run defense, which they started to struggle with a little bit last year. They were impregnable the years before that, but running the football, run defense last year started to have some breaks in the arm, and I think that's why they went younger there. Also, the other defensive lineman they drafted is a big help as well. I'm figuring when I pull up names, because I tend to forget names at times. But Yaya Diaby is one of my favorite guys for Senior Bowl. The fact they added him, now he's an edge rusher that's going to bring a lot of juice as well, and they'll move him around the front. Sometimes he'll line up as an interior rusher. Sometimes he'll line up outside, but he's one of those guys that's got a lot of juice. Savasi A. Dennis is going to add some life to that linebacker core. We know we're getting a little bit of age on one side and an unhappy contract on the other side.
Devin White.
Yeah. So you got to add some youth to the room. Savasi A. Dennis, a little light. He's more of a chase linebacker, but he's excellent in coverage as well. So that's one of the things that you're going to love about him. And you added some pop at tight end with Payne Durham. You got Otten, who's more of a possession tight end, not really overly explosive. Durham can make some explosive plays. There's some good stuff after the catch. So that's a big thing. We lost a lot of that athleticism at the tight end when Gronk retired. It showed last year when he really wanted to attack the middle of the field. He didn't have that big body to do it. You can start to do that with Durham.
Okay. And what was Bill Belichick's? I drafted a punter in the 4th round. I had to have that big going out there.
Punter in the 4th round. Okay, what was up with that?
The punters were in vogue in this draft class, believe it or not. There were quite a few of them taken, even a few kickers. But he had a solid draft class. I mean, he adds Keon White, who's an underdeveloped pass rusher from Georgia Tech, but athletic. He has the frame. He has all the things you like about him. They'll coach him up. They'll get a lot out of him. Christian Gonzalez fell to him. What a steal at corner that is, right? Jake Andrews from Troy, right? You got Cole Strange last year at guard. Now you could plug Andrews right next to him at center. Mapu the linebacker from Sacramento State, underrated player that he was able to pick up. C.D. Sowers, another guy that adds depth at guard. He added a bunch of interior linemen. He's determined to improve that offensive line for Mac Jones. He wants to run the football. He wants to give Bill O'Brien a little more balance than what he had the last few years. They were still trying to be a little Tom Brady-ish, throwing the football outside, letting the guys do all the work. Mac Jones is good. He's not Tom Brady. Run the football, get back.
There's only one Tom Brady.
Yes.
But you think about some of the late picks they got. Keyshawn Booth from LSU. It was a huge steal. And whatever the off the field issues with him were, is why he fell so far. But if there's one place that could straighten you out, one locker room that could do it, it's New England.
Absolutely.
So that's a big steal. He's a big improvement over some of the guys they already have at wide receiver, as long as he goes out there and puts in the work. But definitely Isaiah Bolden, a guy that I thought should have gone higher, the only HBCU player drafted, but definitely a young corner that teams can use. He's going to start out on special teams, eventually transition to sub packages, but definitely a good pick late in the draft. And of course, coached by a great former DB in Deion Sanders.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Prime time.
Gentlemen, fire away.
Now, I got a question
Brad,
for
if you don't mind me jumping in real quick. G-Dub, go for it, bro. Sorry.
Give me your thoughts on the Cowboys draft and their picks, and how do you think they did?
I think they did all right. They could have really knocked it out of the park in the first round. Mozzie Smith is a good D tackle. What I like about Mozzie Smith is he's explosive. He plays fast, right? They don't have too many guys that do that. Neville Gallimore is a powerful guy, but he doesn't play fast. The guys that they have at the D tackle position aren't changers as far as pass rushing, and they get moved too much in the run game. He can blow up plays in the backfield. He can create negative plays on running plays. Where he struggles is when he is blocked, he gets pushed like they do, and he may get off and make the tackle. He makes it 2-3 yards down the field at the college level. NFL level, that's going to be more of a 5-yard, or the guy gets away from you. So what he has to work on is being able to get off of blocks a little bit quicker when he gets stuck on the initial contact. However, he's an explosive player inside. I liked Ika from better, because you talk about a big, powerful nose tackle that they don't have that collapses everything inside. He's a straightforward bull that comes straight at you all the time. I liked Ika better for them because they don't have that. Their big guys tend to hang out at the line of scrimmage. Ika's a big guy that can move and push you into the backfield. They compare him to Danny Shelton. It's a lazy comparison. He's better than Shelton. He's a lighter version of Vita Vea. Not as well-rounded when it comes to pass rush like Vita Vea was, but he is that same kind of play strength where he just destroys things from the interior. Mozzie Smith has that capability, but Ika was the one who was more consistent. But they liked the more athletic guy, which is Mozzie, so that's why they took him there. Shoemaker, underrated tight end, right? We talk about Michigan tight ends, but if you look at the Cowboys tight end room, it's all Big Ten guys, right? You got two Michigan guys in McEwen and Shoemaker. You got a Wisconsin guy in there. You got and it was Indiana is Hendershot. So you got the Big Ten. We talked about Georgia and Philly. Well, the Big Ten tight ends are all in Dallas, right? Shoemaker comes in. He's a little more athletic than McKeon is, but he's a better blocker than the other two guys are, and that's what they needed. When you lose Schultz, well, you need to add a blocker to that room that's going to be a guy that you can hold up at the point of attack to be your inline Y, so those other guys can be your move tight ends and do a bunch of other things. So that's going to be the big thing for him, is he's going to be coming. He's going to be that blocker. He's going to be that guy. He's going to catch some footballs. He's going to do all that stuff. But he's going to be one of the guys to help anchor their running game. They need that guy at the Y who can block, help with defensive ends, help control the edge so you can get outside runs, do a lot of that stuff, and also chip. So you need to slow down that edge rusher for those tackles so Dak has time to throw to whoever he wants to throw to. So he's a better blocker than most of the guys in that room, that tight end room, and he's going to help them out a lot. Overshawn. This one, some people have some bad thoughts about. I like Overshawn for Dallas, and here's why. He's an aggressive linebacker. He's a downhill player. He's a lighter version of Micah Parsons. So you're not going to see him lining up as a defensive end like you do with Parsons, but you're going to see him blitzing from depth. You're going to see him being aggressive coming downhill. He's a chase linebacker when it comes to run. You don't want to see him taking runs head on. You want to see him being covered and chasing it down from behind. But he's a guy, when he blitzes, he makes an impact, and it's something that they want to do. They want to be able to, when they blitz, get there, get home. You see it with Parsons. You see it occasionally with Van Der Esch. You didn't see it so much with the other guys. You know, Jabril Cox coming off the knee injury wasn't effective last year. You saw us, some good things from their rookie linebacker coming off his injury. So they wanted to add to that linebacker room. They wanted to add a guy who kind of adds some pop to the pass rush, who can help chase down plays in the running game and fill gaps. He'll miss a gap or two, but for the most part, he's going to be an aggressive downhill player for him. For Hoko, a stronger edge rusher than what you see with, like Dorrance Armstrong and those guys. So they're going to use him inside and outside, moving around like they do Chauncey Golston. Asim Richards, a guy that plays guard and tackle. So what they love is that position flexibility. It's going to fit right into their offensive line. Eric Scott's a guy that's going to probably end up somewhere in the slot because he's more of a zone corner. But I think overall they're going to use him in different ways, kind of like a corner safety type hybrid role. Deuce Vaughn, how could you not love the explosiveness? Immediately I thought of Darren Sproles when I was watching his film.
Yeah, I was going to say number 43. Yeah, Sproles.
Yeah, he's a little smaller than Sproles, but the same kind of juice. When he hits it hard. Everybody talks about, everybody talks about he's not gonna be able to handle the pounding. He's not going to take a big pounding in the NFL. He's not getting that heavy a workload. His thing is to come in.
He's not scared. He's not scared.
Yeah,
he's not scared either. He's ready to take it.
Matchup. Yeah, he's going to run hard, and he'll provide some matchup problems for you. He'll help out in the kick return game. So that's where his value comes. The one pick that I was like about was Jalen Brooks. And it's funny that the comparison they have for him is a guy that you just see lead Dallas was Noah Brown. And you don't draft Noah Browns. Noah Browns are guys that are special teamers that come in and give you a little bit of production, maybe as a third or fourth receiver. Those guys are guys you go after PFAs. Yet there were better other receivers, but we know the Will McClay philosophy. He doesn't really go after the small school guys. So it was going to be a Georgia guy here, and then he did what he did, which is he signed those guys after the draft. But yeah, that was the only pick I really had a problem with Dallas was the Jalen Brooks pick.
What about with the Jets and their picks?
So I know a lot of people were saying that they wanted certain other things in the Jets, particularly another quarterback for the future, since you want to get rid of the one you drafted 2 years ago. I think the Jets had a pretty good draft. Will McDonald's an excellent guy that fits the room. He's had another pass rusher. You have a defensive coach who loves pass rush. That's what he coached in San Francisco. So it was a natural pick when he saw Will McDonald. He was going to take him. You need him anyway. Every team needs multiple pass rushers. Here's a guy who's going to be an impact player eventually at some point. So I like the pick of him. Joe Tippmann, instant plug-and-play center. You can play him at guard if you need to. So he's a guy that immediately helps out. Aging center, why not improve that position in the draft?
But the Jets also need to get the receivers behind Rodgers. Otherwise, what's he going to do? Nothing.
Well, the thing with Rodgers is you can't bring in too many young receivers. He's not going to. He's not going to be there for those guys' growth. So they're going to go veteran at the receiver position from the rest of the way until they're ready to move forward. But what they picked in this draft was fine. I mean, listen, you added to the O-line again with Warren, Abadaconda in the backfield, add to a deep backfield when you get your other running back, your rookie running back healthy. Zaire Barnes. So Zach Kuntz, a steal of a tight end late in the draft. We talked about tight ends going. I was shocked that Zach Kuntz was still sitting there when the Jets picked him. So we thought we'd have heard that name. Jarek Bernard Converse, a solid depth player, probably be a special teams guy, but he's a solid depth safety. I know they list him as a corner. He could possibly stay at corner. I think you probably kick him inside the safety, and he'll probably play a little closer to the box. He has some speed challenges, and as far as change of direction is another thing. So you kind of don't want to match him up with some of the better receivers on the outside. He's a guy that you want to move around, probably in the hybrid safety corner mix for your sub packages. But overall, he's probably going to be a special teamer before anything else.
All right.
Jeff, what's up, man? It's Alex over here. Yeah, I was thinking more instead of I'm an Eagles fan. I think every 9 out of 10 draft pundits have been beating that horse or hitting that punching bag for a while with plenty of insight. I already feel pretty darn good. We'll see how these guys do on Sundays. I was going to almost approach it more so. The reason I was trying to jump in off Brad talking about the Patriots, I'm always intrigued. Everyone is about what Bill's thinking. They've needed a receiver since God knows when. I mean, if you're going to draft Mac Jones first round, at least provide him the weapons to know if he's able to sink or swim, right? They've been going to battle with like 3 or 4 number 2 or number 3s since the guy's been drafted. So I don't know about you. I don't know what Mac Jones is yet. Give him weapons. Let's see if he can actually go to battle. A guy I loved for them potentially first round. And I know, again, it's tough to pass on a corner like Gonzalez, who pretty much falls into your lap. Yeah. But Jackson Smith, Ohio State. Jackson Smith, this guy was considered, I mean, Brian Hartline, Ohio State grows receivers on trees. All the coaches, you know these guys, you're an expert in the area. I mean, Ohio State raves about this guy being the best receiver they've maybe had in 5 or 7 years. They just produced Garrett Wilson, the offensive rookie of the year, Chris Olave. I mean, would you have, if I were the Patriots right there, I would have taken Jackson Smith with that first round. Then finally, you have Mac Jones, that number 1 weapon. I mean, what do you think about that?
I look at the history there, and you look at Belichick. He doesn't have a great track record of drafting. So you're thinking N'Keal Harry and all those guys he drafted just have not worked out for him. He's going to go where he's most comfortable. Yeah, he's going to go where he's most comfortable. He sees a corner that falls to him, he's going to take him. If he sees a defensive lineman that falls to him at that point, he's going to take him because he's a defensive guy who's been this defensive guru for many years. He's had an offensive guy he's trusted, has put stuff together. He's had a lot more success with veteran receivers and mid-round receivers or late-round receivers. You think of when he was winning the Super Bowls in the first few years of Brady, they didn't have any really big receivers. Those guys were solid guys. They didn't do anything anywhere else. They were just good New England, the Troy Browns of the world of those guys. So his most success at receiver came when he had just guys. Edelman. These weren't high draft picks. So I think the tight end position was more of a bigger thing for him. But when you had Brady, you kind of built the passing game from the inside out, right? So he's trying to find his new niche on offense. And I think it's going to start with the running game. So that's why he valued the offensive line in this draft. You look at a lot of his picks were offensive linemen. So I think that's where he's trying to really build up, is control the line of scrimmage. That Saban, Kirby Smart formula for college right now is you load up on offensive defensive line talent and control the line of scrimmage, and it allows you to control the flow of the game. He's starting to seem to kind of do that. He's adding a lot of these offensive and defensive linemen to try and control the line of scrimmage, and then he's adding solid pieces around it. I think he did a better thing getting rid of Jacoby Myers and bringing in what's his name? From Kansas City. He was Juju Smith-Schuster. Thank you. Juju Smith-Schuster. So bringing him in gives him the veteran he wanted. They still have, unfortunately, N'Keal Harry there. Just didn't pan out. Listen, a lot of people expected a lot more from a N'Keal Harry. You just don't see the separation you saw at Iowa State. That's been the dog. That's been what's dogged him ever since he got drafted. Is he just can't separate, and you can't out athlete the corners at the NFL level like he did in college. So that's been his biggest issue. But But yeah, I think what he's kind of doing is that Bill O'Brien's going to run the football. It's not going to be what we saw with his previous offenses, and it's going to be more about controlling the game, getting back to getting a defense that's going to stop people and allow his offense to kind of control the flow of the game. He's getting back to the roots of what Belichick was before he had the Brady that threw it all over the yard.
Yeah.
Interesting. One more rapid fire one, man. I mean, I saw the Eagles. The Falcons snagged a guy I loved right the pick before, but then I loved Jalen Carter following the Eagles, as you said, and as Andy Reid's been preaching, and now the Eagles have adopted that to that mindset and gotten to 2 Super Bowls recently through, when in doubt, draft big guys, beat up little guys, building the trenches, right? When in doubt, grab a 330-pound monster and let's go to battle. Think about, first of all, who is your favorite running back, and then what the Eagles doing overall with Jalen Carter?
I love my favorite running back was, of course, Bijan Robinson. Like I said, had he come out last year, he still would have been my RB1. He couldn't higher way higher than I expected him to go. I did not expect a running back to go top 10. I didn't expect 2 to go in the top 12. So that's a whole other thing with Detroit. The Atlanta snagging him was a shock to me because I didn't expect him to go top 10, but they get a darn good player. One of the few first-round grades on my board. So Bijan Robinson is that complete back. He's going to block. He's going to run. He's going to catch. He's going to do everything you need him to do. He's going to make impact plays. I have nothing wrong with taking a running back top 10. I just didn't see teams doing it the way we've seen them treat the running back position the last 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, you think about it, you can name on one hand running backs taken in the last 8 or 9 drafts in the top 10.
Amazing.
It's very few of them. And they just seem to devalue the position. So I didn't expect anybody to take them top 10, and Atlanta proved us wrong graciously. And Detroit proved us wrong twice by taking somebody at 12. Who I didn't think deserved to go at 12. I didn't think Gibbs deserved to go at 12, believe it or not. I thought that was a reach. But getting Jalen Carter, it's funny. I do a show called The Perspective with Phil Daniels, who's a former defensive line coach in Philadelphia.
Wow.
And he told me, he said,
Yeah.
about a month before the draft, he goes, Carter's going to fall at Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is going to take him. And lo and behold, we're sitting there at pick 7 going, Carter's still on the board. If he gets past the Raiders and the Bears, he's an Eagle. There's no way he's not getting past Philadelphia. And when the Bears traded from 9 to the Eagles, I said, "Oh, the Eagles taking Carter." It was almost like a vision. He had the vision, and it just came to fruition. I got to give credit to Howie Roseman. When he knows what he wants, he goes and gets it. So he wasn't taking any chances with somebody leapfrogging him to get Carter at 10, so he jumped up himself at 9 to go get him. And listen, you're getting one of the highest graded players in the draft. I know people had questions about the personality. There's a difference between bad character and immaturity. He showed immaturity. 20-something-year-old speed.
Yeah.
There are 40-something-year-olds that speed like that. That's an immature decision. Bad character are the guys you got to watch and constantly hope that they don't get into trouble time and time again. He's had incidents like that with the speeding incident. He had another one, obviously, in the past where that was recorded and that came out later on. But you're not seeing him getting drunk in public. You're not seeing him getting in bar fights. You're not seeing him with cases of assault on women. You're not seeing that kind of stuff from him. You're not seeing him constantly having issues with teammates and coaches. That's not what you're seeing from him. You're hearing glowing stuff from his teammates where he's taking care of them. So there's a difference between immaturity and bad character. It could be a very thin line at times, but for the most part, he's younger. He's an immature. He has some immature moments. I think overall he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Appreciate it.
So, Jeff, you were okay with a running back going you said there were 2 of them in the top 12 picks. To me, and you do this for a living. To me, it seems like the NFL is shifting to a passing league. I was watching a YouTube clip the other day When Emmitt Smith broke the rushing record.
Mhm.
The funny thing is, it's just that position hasn't been for the last, I would say, 10 years, has not been the premier position that it once was when you had like my era growing up, I had Smith and Barry Sanders, and then it went to like Jerome Bettis and guys like that.
Yes.
But there isn't one guy that you can pencil in right now outside of maybe Barkley in with the Giants as a premier running back. I mean, I don't know how Bijan Robinson's going to do with Atlanta. I hope he does well. I hope he's facing the Bucs twice a year if being in the AFC South, but or NFC South, excuse me. But I'm just curious on how the running back position has kind of gone away. I mean, I remember the legends as like the Earl Campbells and the Walter Paytons and the Jim Browns, and back in those days, those running backs would run you over, and they've gotten away with that. And now they have, certain backs that are north and south runners, and then they're east to west sideline runners. So I'm just curious on how you feel. Like you said, you're okay with drafting a running back in the top 10. I'm just curious on why a lot of the other NFL teams aren't quite ready to take that leap then for a couple of them. You know what I mean?
I believe they're willing to do it for a special player. If you believe Robinson is special, they're going to do that. They thought McCaffrey was special, so they did it. They thought Elliott was special, so they did it. Honestly, Barkley, yes. Believe it or not, Gurley was special, but because of the knee injury, he didn't go top 10. So when they believe the guy is special, he's a transitional player, they'll do it. I think what you're seeing, though, is with the way they're looking at the draft, it all comes with money. Okay, so granted, they're on a rookie pay scale now, so you can get them cheaper in the draft. The second contract is what matters. So when they are really highly productive, you got to pay their second contract. Most running backs suffer a fall off during their second contract, so they tend not to want to pay those guys. We saw it with Elliott. They paid him the contract the first couple of years of the second deal. He was fine, but injuries and time and wear and tear wore him down to the point where he wasn't the explosive runner anymore. He wasn't breaking as many tackles anymore. The blocking that he was getting that was clean in the beginning of his career wasn't there anymore. So it became a lot of dirty runs for him. And your $90 million running back should be getting you 3.5, 4.1 yards a carry. They expect 5 yards a carry from that kind of guy. Also, with the spread sets, you're getting a lot less of the downhill runs. You're not getting the under center and turn around and hand the ball off. It's now they're crossing the face. So you got to be a little more explosive to pull that kind of thing off. So the committee backfield is in vogue. You don't pay those guys as much. You use them up, you spit them out, you bring in another one. So you don't draft that high. So that's where it's coming to play. You're going to use a committee, you don't use a high pick. You can third round, fourth round, get a running back.
Gotcha. Because like I said, I mean, it seems like that position, I'm not going to say position's going away. It's just it's not as important as it once was. Like I said, when I started watching football, it was Barry Sanders, Thurman Thomas, Emmitt Smith, and those were guys that, were valued. Like Emmitt, I forget what round Emmitt Smith was drafted in, and he's a Florida Gator. He came out of Florida and helped Dallas win multiple Super Bowls. And Barry Sanders, it still baffles me to this day that Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas were in the same backfield in college. I can't imagine an offense trying to figure those two out. That's flabbergasting to know that they both were Oklahoma State Cowboys, but it's flabbergasting. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. How do you, as a DC, go, okay, who are we going to tackle today? We take Barry out, we got to worry about Thurman. So if we cover Thurman, Barry's going to be dancing all over the field. But yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, again, like you said, I think with the Falcons, they wanted Robinson. I think he was the guy that they're like, okay, if this guy's on the board when our pick comes at 5, we're going to take a chance with him. I mean, they're a young team. They're a young franchise. They have Ritter from Cincinnati from last year, who I thought I got to see him a lot, being that I covered USF and got to see him when he was at Cincinnati. But I mean, the Falcons have to overcome and I think I saw a fellow YouTuber, Urinating Tree, very funny guy, big sports guy. If you check out his channel, he's hilarious with his sports takes. But he showed a clip at the end of his draft thing where I think a guy for the Falcons was announcing the pick. And as he announced the pick, he's walking off and some guy yells, "Remember 28-3?" And he goes, "Yeah, we've heard that one a bunch of times." As he was walking away, he goes, "Oh, we've heard that one a bunch of times." So they've got to overcome obviously that, and they're on the rise. That division, the AFC South, the NFC South is kind of a down division right now. Obviously, we're going to see, Young for Carolina. We're going to see him. This year, Tampa Bay's got, Baker and Kyle Trask, who I don't think has been given the opportunity. I don't think Kyle's that great quarterback. We'll see. Maybe, they were doing a over-under on local sports radio today, how many games he's going to start. Vegas has him starting at under 1.5 games for this year. So that's how Vegas is seeing it. Jason Light has said that he's looking for a veteran quarterback. So I don't know if they're done quite yet bringing in. They might bring another veteran guy in. I don't know. I'll be paying attention. It's going to be interesting to see how the Bucks do this year. Again, they got the offensive lineman. I see that the what's his name? Their former offensive lineman signed with the Chiefs. Why can't
Devin Smith?
Yes, Smith signed with the Chiefs. Donovan Smith, signed with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So he's going to help Patrick Mahomes now. So he goes from helping Tom Brady to helping the future of the NFL at the quarterback position in Patty Mahomes. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Bucks. It's going to be a transition year. I'm interested to see what happens with Devin White. His DC comes out I think the DC or his linebackers coach says he has champagne issues. So that was the title that I've seen in articles floating around Tampa Bay, being that he's being paid $11 million this upcoming season. He needs to play the contract out, then ask for more money next season when he becomes, I think, a free agent, I believe, next year. And the funny thing is you got a guy next to him in Levante David who's been through hell and high water with the franchise.
Yep.
He's like one ring, the ring that they won with Tom, and he wants to retire as a Buck. He was a free agent. He came back. He wants to retire as a Buck, and I can definitely see his name in the Ring of Honor one of these days when he retires and then he hangs it up. He definitely will be up in the Ring of Honor for the Bucks. I can't see why he wouldn't be up there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting with the Bucks this year. That's just how I look at it. It would be great to see them do very well. The division is winnable. I mean, like I said, the Falcons are young, the Panthers are young, and the Saints. We'll see what happens. That you were talking about Chris Olave. He's been an absolute stud for the Saints the past few seasons, and now they bring in Derek Carr. So I'm curious on how that's all going to work out for them. And I don't know what Alvin Kamara's status is, if he's going to get in trouble for what he did off the field or what's going on with that whole situation. So that's an interesting question mark for the Saints coming up this year. But yeah, to me, it was an interesting draft. I felt that everyone did, like you said, Jeff, I think everyone got the guys that they wanted, or if they didn't, they fell to them. But I agree with you with that. Everybody was talking now, correct me if I'm wrong, because the ESPN says this, and of course they always say this on radio the next day. The NFL always seems to bring in one quarterback that they know is not going to go in the top 10 to make him sit and suffer. And that just happened to be Will Levis this year, because
Yeah.
I
And
did get him to go top 10.
Jeff would agree. Jeff would agree. And he said, yeah, he goes, he didn't deserve to go that high.
Yeah.
So once again, he was brought in to sit in the green room with a very, very fine looking woman that I guess his girlfriend or fiance. And yeah, I mean, he got to sit there and he's like, okay, I'm not going to get drafted. Well, he did. It just took till day 2.
Yeah.
And the one other thing I wanted to say too, you were talking earlier about the kid from Penn State, the cornerback, who's Joey Porter.
Jr., yeah.
Love him.
I got to see him play in the Outback Bowl against.
Oh yeah.
Who were they playing against? Shoot, it was the last year that the bowl game was held because now they changed the name. It's now the Mariah Quest Bowl. They Outback pulled the sponsorship. But Penn State lost. Anyway, I got to see him play, and I was surprised that he didn't go in round 1 either. I think he was one of the highly touted CBs, and he's in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten's always been known for their defense. So it was just interesting to see why a guy like him would fall. But then again, it's interesting how he falls to his dad's team. It's kind of cool how that happened. First pick in the second round, and yep, we're going to bring the other Joey Porter. And we had his father. Now we're going to bring Joey Porter. So yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
And I had him mocked to Pittsburgh in round 1. So the fact that he fell out of round 1 and then came to them in round 2, it's like, I expect him to be a Steeler just a round earlier. It's funny when you mentioned Kyle Trask. I don't think he was set up for success in Tampa Bay. You had time with Tom Brady there to get him ready. Last year provided that opportunity when Tom Brady had to step away from the team. When you're grooming a young quarterback, you don't put him out there with the 3s or the 2s. You put him out there with the 1s. So he's getting the best receivers that get open. He's got the best offensive line, or at least the version of the offensive line that you believe is the best, that can actually protect them. They didn't do that. They kept putting Gabbert out there, getting Gabbert out there because they believed they had to win with Tom out for however how long, and they wanted to get Blaine Gabbert ready. Well, Blaine Gabbert's a veteran. He's been in the league long enough. He can play when he plays. If you drafted this guy high enough to believe he was an impact player for the future, and you did that in the second round, you spent the second round pick on him, you should have done that. They didn't do it. Yeah. So now you're in a situation where he's in that situation. He hasn't been prepared. Sticking him out there with the guys who are fringe players that can't get open in time for him to throw the football with the guys that are protecting him was just a recipe for disaster. Now you're throwing him out there. You got to win with him. You brought in Baker Mayfield because you needed a veteran to compete with him. 10-1, Baker's going to beat him out. It's going to take a very bad Baker Mayfield to lose to Kyle Trask right now. So you haven't done Kyle Trask any favors. If you bring in another veteran, you're bringing somebody else with experience over Kyle Trask to go out there and beat a guy who hasn't gotten the proper experience. So you're not setting him up for success at all. You're just continuing to push it to the point where eventually he's either going to get cut, released, traded, or he's just going to play out this contract and end up on the market somewhere, and he just won't be worth anything. So it was a waste. You've wasted a second-round pick by not investing it.
I think there was two issues that kind of stand out to me, Jeff, and I love your points to kind of piggyback on that about Trask. Okay, first of all, to me, it tells me, first of all, he wasn't ready. Maybe he's not picking up the playbook. This is Trask, okay? Mm-hmm. Like you said, Brady goes out. They want to keep the truck rolling, right? They're kind of, it's hitting the fan, you know what I mean? They want to maybe go 500, stay afloat while Brady's out, keep chugging, and then let Tom come back. So first of all, to me, Trask wasn't ready. Also, and I've mentioned it to Brad on one of his, the line with the offensive line beat up. Maybe they didn't want to, feed him to the Sharks and feed him to the Wolves by letting. So what I mean? Maybe was that a little bit? They vamp the line now.
Well,
I mean, but you're right. I mean, Trask,
it's
been a weird situation. It's been a bad situation for Trask overall.
Yeah. Yeah. If the line was bad last year, the starting line, right? They consider the starting line bad. He was playing with the guys that were backing those guys up, which is even worse. So if you're worried about him being gun shy, that's not the guys to put him out there with. And that's what they
I
did.
know,
And
yeah.
when he had the worst throws in the preseason was when he was running, trying to get away from pressure, or he was throwing on time and getting hit by pressure. He didn't just throw bad throws in the coverage and go, oh, shoot, that was a bad throw. Most of his interceptions in the preseason or even his fumbles were from just he had no protection. There was a
Panic.
second or third string left tackle. It was backups on the interior of the line. It was a backup right tackle. You've got backup receivers, so those guys don't get open as fast. So you got to wait. And he's a guy that's trying to throw on time.
Yeah.
He's not. He was never a really big ad libber at Florida. He was a guy that threw on time to an elite tight end / wide receiver in Kyle Pitts. He had a good running game behind him. Yeah, so he had pieces around him that allowed him to throw on schedule. He wasn't getting that in the preseason last year. The guys he was playing with, the guys that you were basically going to have to ad lib and make plays because throwing on time with those guys wasn't going to happen. And that's kind of what you saw from it. So it doesn't help him progress because the timing that he doesn't have a feel for that offensive line. He doesn't get a chance to have a full feel for receivers getting open because those aren't the guys he's playing with. He's playing with fringe players that realistically, most of them didn't make the team. And if they did, they were the fifth and sixth receiver. They played mostly special teams, right? So it didn't help. You could have played them in the preseason with the ones, and still done that because what happened. Because what happens is Blaine Gabbert could have played week one if Tom Brady was no matter what because he has the experience. He's a veteran quarterback that's been on several teams. He would have been ready to pick up the clip, drop the clipboard, throw the helmet on, and go in at any time. You had to groom this young man, and you didn't do it. So now he's nowhere near in the situation ready to do it. So it's kind of the thing where if you didn't build it up, there's no foundation. You can't put the furniture in the house.
Yeah.
So, and that's what they're doing now is, you're just throwing them out there and saying, okay, go compete, guy, with nothing.
Yeah, I think it's more so an indictment almost. And hey, I respect the Bucs. They've had a really good legacy. It's not about that. I mean, I want them to do well. I'm really glad that they had a good draft. I love Mike Evans. You got 2 Hall of Fame receivers. You got maybe 2 Hall of Fame linebackers. They got tons of great players, I think, still. The line fell apart. Brady was dealing with more drama than, 90210. That wasn't good. He had no offensive line, and then, but I think as far as Trask, if you had to, if I had to bet $50 right now, maybe he wasn't learning the playbook or something. I mean, to have Gabbert, he's played plenty. He still hasn't shown me or anyone too much. So I would have put in Trask at least. I think there was something maybe holding them back, not even letting them even think about playing Trask. Because Gabbert, Gabbert's not going to win you anything, I don't think.
Yeah. If you look at the coach, it told you everything you need to know. Okay, he was going to trust the veteran quarterback over the younger player. You have a quarter, and honestly, neither one of them would have helped you a lot because they, just like Tom Brady, they weren't guys that throw off schedule, right? So they would have had to sit in that pocket and try and throw the ball quick and do all the stuff that Tom doesn't get it out, and hopefully they're making the right reads. You have a guy now that throws off schedule. Baker Mayfield's going to break the pocket and do all the crazy outside the pocket throws because, one, that's where he's most comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Baker Mayfield sitting in the pocket, as long as the interior is clean, he's fine. If they're bringing that pressure in his face, he struggles. So, but allowing him to bail out of a pocket is the best thing that happens for Baker Mayfield because when he can create throws on the run, he has his best vision. So that's the difference between him and Trask. Trask has to sit in there a little bit more and throw on schedule. Mayfield doesn't. And I think that's one thing they love about Baker is just that. He's going to create more than Kyle Trask can.
Right.
I was going to say, Alex made a good point there. And Mike Evans, I don't know how many more years he has left on that contract, his current contract.
Total legend.
But yeah, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I think he's had 1,000-yard seasons over the last 5 or 6, 7,000-yard seasons. I think he's had in a row. And then you bring and Chris Godwin, I think, is kind of one of those underestimated wide receivers that no one likes to talk about. The guy comes off of ACL surgery and doesn't miss a step. Like everyone's like, oh, how's he going to do? He looks like he's going to be afraid. Last year he went out there, he looked like the same Chris Godwin we all know and love. I think he can get his number back now because now Tom's gone. So he could take number 12 back if he decides to take the jersey number back. But, see, Trask has weapons, and I agree, Jeff. I think I don't know what the reasoning behind drafting him in round 2. I think that Bruce Arians, I think, was still the head coach, right, when they drafted him, or did okay, so Bruce
he was there.
So Bruce took him in round 2 of what, last year's draft, the 2 years ago. The
2 years ago, he was the same class.
2021 draft. The COVID. Well, the year after the COVID. Okay, year after COVID. Okay, so I don't know what happened between him and then Todd Bowles taking over as head coach. Like, I don't know, Alex might be right. Maybe he wasn't able to read the playbook, or you're right. He should have been in preseason last year with Godwin, with Evans, with Kate Otten and all those guys. Ronald Jones, for example, he needed to be in with those guys to get the timing and everything down, and they put in Blaine Gabbert, which I was watching a draft bust thing the other day, and Blaine Gabbert's name was mentioned in that draft bust. I mean, obviously they were talking about, the clip was talking about teams making huge leaps and moving up in the draft. Jamarcus Russell, obviously, and Ryan Leaf were the two biggest. Like, they moved, San Diego, LA now, and then of course Oakland, Vegas now moved up so many picks. Some teams that move up, it made sense. They moved up to get their guy, to get Emmitt Smith, to get guys like that change their organization for the better. But there have been times where people have made – no problem, Gerald – jumped up and have basically busted, when it came to – have a good night, bud. I mean, the Bucks, look at them drafting a kicker. Drafting Roberto Aguayo out of FSU, and then going and getting Matt Gay a couple years later after that. And now Matt, I don't know who Matt just signed with. He's not with LA anymore. He signed with another team. And Roberto Aguayo, I don't think is even in the league anymore. I don't think he's even in.
No.
He was kicking for Chicago, right? He went from the Bucks to the Bears, and then did he disappear or? Okay.
Not one of the final draft picks. Yeah, he's missing in action.
But I mean, that's I guess that's the risk of taking a kicker.
Not the Ring of Honor.
You hope that it works out, but at the long part, it may not work out. It may not work out that way. Like I said, I forget who they were talking about. I remember they showed when the Saints under Mike Ditka drafted Ricky Williams out of Texas, they gave away their whole draft for one pick.
Oh, yeah.
And Ditka came in with a cigar in his mouth going, that's my guy. That's it. He gave the whole draft away.
The press conference was legendary. He walked in with Ricky Williams to announce it, and he had the dreads and the shades, and it was like, Ditka, you're over the top. I loved it. Yeah. And then Ricky, trust me, I don't judge anyone. I'm not going to say anything more, but yeah. Ricky fell in love with the ganja a little bit and went on some sabbaticals. Ricky not going to be Hall of Famer. He had a good career, but you're right. I mean, Ditka literally mortgaged an entire draft, and he gave up maybe 8 or 9 draft picks. That's the biggest draft day move ever, besides Cowboys, Herschel Walker.
Yeah,
I'm gonna guess that right now. You know what I'm saying? That was like an earth-shaking, ridiculous move. I mean, that was too much.
Yeah. He gave up everything for a very good player. I think Ricky Williams,
of course,
had he been drafted 10 years later, may have had a better chance to last in the NFL, because they kind of understood mental health a little bit better 10 years later than when he was there.
That's true.
Yeah, he was one of those guys. They didn't really understand it. He was self-medicating with marijuana, which is why he kept getting suspended. And you look at him now, he's a productive person. He can talk to people. when he was in New Orleans, he couldn't deal with people. He would do
Great
interviews with the helmet on.
Smart guy.
Yeah, but he couldn't deal with people. He would do interviews with the helmet on.
You remember that?
He
Yeah.
couldn't deal. Yeah, he
With
couldn't deal.
with the
Yeah,
visor too. With
Yeah.
like a really closed off helmet. Yeah.
Yeah. He was very manic depressive, so he had those moments where he just introverted real hard. So it was one of those things where he was ahead of his time when it came to getting drafted and dealing with the mental health issues. They weren't prepared for it. Very few teams had anybody that dealt with that kind of thing. So his one out, and then there were other guys that kind of did it. You look at Quincy Carter in Dallas was another one of those guys, manic depressive. How he coped was he used drugs. So it just, some guys, I mean, not saying Quincy Carter would have had a great career, but, he may have had some kind of career. He won 10 games in a season and took them to the playoffs. So he wasn't that bad a quarterback, right? So
he had some good moments. Yep.
It's just a different time where they actually have a better idea of dealing with mental health issues now. And they're still getting better at it. There's still a lot more that they can do, but teams at least have.
I love what you said, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you described it. That was really apt and creative. I mean, you said he was almost like ahead of his time, or maybe, not to slight the NFL, maybe they were behind their, what they've learned. You know what I mean? I mean, there's better help available. And Ricky Williams, I mean, you turn on the tapes, man, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a more talented running back.
Ricky owns a marijuana business now. So he's happy with what he's doing now. Yeah. But Jeff is right. He's able to be more communicative with people. Every time I think of the visor as running back, I got to think of LaDainian Tomlinson, and he was mentioned in that. He was mentioned in that as one of those players that no one seemed to want to go after, and then he became probably the greatest running back in San Diego / Los Angeles Chargers history. I don't think there's been anyone that's ever been better than him. Just couldn't get over the hump. They just could not get to the Super Bowl with him on the roster. I mean, they were in the AFC Championship game against the Patriots, I believe. They just could not get over the hump.
Yeah.
And it's surprising because you have a Hall of Fame quarterback in Phillip Rivers. You guys remember that draft. Yeah. The Chargers took Peyton Manning after he told them he was not going to San Diego.
Oh, Eli.
I'm sorry, Eli.
Yeah.
They traded the pick.
They flipped him on,
and then they got Phillip Rivers.
Yep.
So in a way, I think it kind of both worked out, both for the Giants and the Chargers, because both of them are going to be Hall of Famers. There's no way that Eli's not going to be a Hall of Famer. He'll be in there. He won 2 Super Bowls. He's
first ballot.
So, and Phillip Rivers has got to be another one of those guys that goes first ballot or close to it. So yeah, it's interesting. I guess I was going back and watching, and here's another thing. How many teams passed on Dan Marino? Like his hometown Steelers passed. I mean, just imagine they go from Terry Bradshaw to Dan Marino. What a transition that would have been for the Pittsburgh Steelers had it been
hometown
they
hero.
Picked up. And Marino was a Pitt Panther. So he went to Pittsburgh, born and raised in Pittsburgh, and I'm just saying that would have been interesting to see 112 to a 13 and it be that way had it been from Bradshaw to Marino. So and then there's been situations like you have where Peyton Manning is in Indianapolis. He leaves, they draft Andrew Luck. Luck gets hurt. Now he's out, and now they're scrambling to find a quarterback, and now they got Anthony Richardson coming in. But, I mean, it's interesting sometimes how, like, the next guy up, and Jeff was mentioning Mac Jones, a lot of Patriots fans, and I'm not one of them, we're stuck on Tom. We're stuck on Tom. And I like Mac. I like Mac in college, so I don't mind. And, again, I think he needs weapons. And maybe that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to be more balanced. That might be good for him to not have to chuck the ball 50 times down the field. He's not that type of quarterback. Obviously, what game did they win where they ran the ball, 50, 60 times in a game?
The Buffalo game with the high win.
Buffalo Bills, correct. So, and again, that division really is that division's tight because the Jets are good with getting Aaron Rodgers. Buffalo's not going nowhere. I mean, there's another one in Allen who no one wanted to pick because he wasn't in one of the top, FBS schools, and he's turned out to be great, probably one of the best since, Jim Kelly played the position. So it's interesting to see that division's going to be all shook up. I mean, the Jets are good. The Dolphins, if Tua can stay away from concussions, they're going to be good. They have a good defense. They're going to be good. Now, they didn't have a first-round pick. I think they lost their pick because the
Bills.
Tom Brady, right? I think that's why the Dolphins.
The tampering, They lost their first-round pick because of tampering.
And then, Brad, also, no, you're making great points on the AFC East. Let's not forget the Bills, who have been kind of on the doorstep for almost 3 or 4 years now. They're chomping at the bit. They got the key. They got the key code to the Super Bowl. They're due for a trip. I mean, that division is getting
past Kansas
nasty.
City.
Oh, of course.
Get past Kansas City.
That's back-to-back Jones. I love what Jeff said about Bill's philosophy is get the ball out quickly. Maybe you don't need a DeAndre Hopkins or a Jackson Smith. You don't need a Randy Moss. That one, you know what I mean? He doesn't dream of that every day he wakes up. He doesn't need that to win a Super Bowl. Mac Jones, though, look at Mac Jones in college. He had, I think, 3 number 1 draft pick receivers. He had better weapons. He had Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy. He had better weapons in Bama than he does in New England.
Yes,
correct.
That's a problem for Mac Jones.
I got Rich on here. He's a Seminoles fan, which I think the Noles are on the up. By the way, I hate to say that. Wearing my Gator colors. I hate to say that because that's my in-state rival. But they are on the up. I think Coach Norvell has them moving in the right direction. They extended him. And who's their quarterback? Travis, I think, is their quarterback. He's a good quarterback. That team, I think, could win the ACC this year. I mean, that's just my opinion. They played very well a season ago. I think that team is in line. Clemson, I don't think is as strong. I think the Clemson Tigers are starting to slip a little bit down. They're not as dominant as they once were. But again, you got to worry about Mac Brown in North Carolina, which you don't think North Carolina. I think North Carolina is good basketball.
Wow.
Lou would tell you more about that with college basketball. But North Carolina is a pretty good team. NC State is a pretty good team. I got to see USF play them last year.
Yeah.
North Carolina is a good school too. In North Carolina State, knocked off North Carolina in the last game of the season a year ago. So I mean it and then when for Rich the Jaguars, and again it's great that Trevor Lawrence finally got a head coach. Finally getting a head coach in Jacksonville, and the Jaguars now are on the up too. There's another team that's on the up in the AFC South. So there's another team that's going up too, because for a longest time, they're going to be the team that moves to London. That's the team that the NFL is going to shift to London because they can't win here in the United States.
Let's not forget.
So let's shift them to London.
Let's not forget the Jaguars also came within a couple plays, maybe about 90, 120 seconds of knocking off the Chiefs in Arrowhead last year. What do? They come back with the possible coach of the year. I'm always going to be loyal, Philly, Doug Peterson. Now they have Lawrence coming back a year smarter, a year wiser, a year bigger. Oh, and they add Calvin Ridley off his gambling suspension from the Falcons. He's their new number 1. Wait a second. Now they already had Zay Jones. Now they have an incredible tight end who had about 15 receptions that game. Jacksonville has about 4 or 5 number 1 picks on that defensive line. Yeah, Jaguars could easily. They're going to be top 3, top 4 in the AFC. AFC is loaded right now.
Funny thing about Calvin Ridley is he bet here at the Hard Rock in Tampa, so he got busted right here in Florida. He got busted right here in Florida.
Man, I'm pissed off. Okay. Damn. I got to get his number. I'm kidding. I kid.
Yeah.
I'm Jason Kidd.
I think they're going to have to run that division for a while, being that, the Colts are still trying to rebuild themselves. The Texans are trying to rebuild themselves. And Tennessee is right now in flux. because there's a lot going changing to see. So it's going to be the Jags division for a while before anybody catches them.
They looked really impressive last year, man. They look like they want to. They look like they belong, and they're young. And look at their roster. I mean, 90% of their best players are like 23, 24, 25. They got a lot of top draft picks. Yeah, and now they add Ridley back. Peterson's on a roll. Jacksonville's back.
And they won a playoff game. They came from behind to win in the first round of the playoffs last year, because everybody watching that game, even including myself, wrote them off. Oh, it's over. Wow, Cinderella season. Then you turn on the TV and you're like, wait a minute. Jacksonville won this football game. It's like, okay, maybe the Jaguars are not that team that they used to be, where they were just like a doormat for everyone to run over. I don't think that they're that way anymore at all. I think Jacksonville, that probably, in my opinion, the three teams, in the state of Florida, I think Jacksonville might be the best team right now going into the year, because Miami, if Tua can stay healthy, I would put the Dolphins on top, and the Bucs are in a
repeat and stay healthy.
Yeah.
So, but Jacksonville's got to be up.
And if the Dolphins coach, I'm sorry, looks like a 14-year-old skateboarder whenever I see him in clutch time. I'm not a bad versus my guy with more bling than Paul Wall. Like Doug Peterson laughs at a guy like that. Yeah, Jacksonville over Miami all day. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's
plus Tua can't. God bless him, but Tua, I mean, a lot of injuries. Obviously, McDaniels is a good coach, but I'm just taking a little pot shot. I mean, Jaguars have the coaching advantage. They got further. They don't have an injury concern at quarterback. I mean, I'm going Lawrence over Tua every day of the week. So, I mean, and then Jacksonville's got just Miami is a good defense too, but I think, then now Tyreek Hill's talking, I'm probably going to last another year. I'm leaving. It's like Miami had like a little window right there. They looked terrible. You remember that in Buffalo. They couldn't even get play calls in. So maybe I should have been harder on the Miami coach. That was pathetic. He was sitting around. I think he was vaping. He's laughing. He can't get play. They had three or four delay games. Yeah, he's doing this. He was doing this thing. I don't hide it. It's a little vape. It should be. No, but he was doing that on TV. CBS goes, we'll be right back. Miami can't get a play in. Wow. You remember that? They could not call a play. Not really a good endorsement for your head coach. Yeah.
No, wholeheartedly agree.
I'm not a big believer in Miami. I don't think anyone is. Outside of Miami, I don't think there's a lot of NFL believers in Miami. And Tua might last 8 years. I hope he can. Tua might also last 8 more months. Big question mark.
That was the question I was gonna ask Jeff. What happened to his brother? Did his brother come out of Maryland, or is he still with the Terrapins?
Yeah, Terrapins.
He's still in Maryland. He's still in
Maryland. Okay.
I think he has another year.
You like him a lot, Jeff?
I like him. I don't think
Jeff. Do you see him?
I don't think he's as good as Tua.
Okay.
I wouldn't have a high grade on him. He would have to have a magical year to really show me a lot to really elevate him up a board. He's probably a day 3 guy or a priority free agent because there's size issues, there's the arm strength issues. Doesn't have a strong arm as Tua did coming out of college. He's got some things to him. You just see two different quarterbacks. You saw what Tua was the minute he stepped on the field. You haven't seen that kind of play from him yet. He's just sometimes, listen, one brother's better than the other. We had a pair of twin brothers in this draft class, the Brown brothers at Illinois, and the running back was good. But that safety, Sidney Brown, the Eagles got a steal there too.
There we go.
That kid is one of the best safeties I saw in this class.
I meant to ask you about him. Brad, if you don't mind, quick little shot on that. I mean, what's your deal with him, man? I didn't want to just go like all Eagles, whatever draft picks, but from what I'm reading, this guy could be a steal. I've been desperate for a big hitting safety badass since my favorite athlete retired in any sport, Brian Dawkins. What are your thoughts on the Eagles' new safety?
I call him a sturdier built Bob Sanders. A guy that can hit you, he can cover in space, and he can actually cover man to man. He was blanketing tight ends, bigger tight ends
Third rounder
at Senior Bowl. Yeah, there was a steal. It was a steal. The
What was
safeties
the
in general.
What was the reason for the drop? What was the reason for the drop there, Jeff? I mean, given you know so much about some of where these different draft boards and scouting reports are, why would he drop to the third round? He sounds like it could be a real star early on.
Well, the safety position didn't get drafted high at all. No safeties went in the first round. We expected at least one. We expected Branch to go in the first. He didn't go till day 2.
Yeah.
He didn't go till round
Bama.
2. So
yeah.
the safeties in general, there wasn't a run. We expected a huge run on safeties day 2 and day 3. It never materialized. For some reason, the safeties this year just kind of went sporadically down the board. But he was the second or third safety off the board, and he legitimately was one of the top 3 safeties in this class. I mean, if you watch the film, he's just everywhere. You just look for the little ponytail hanging out the back of the helmet and a little bit of muscle. And he is all over the film. He covers, he hits, he finds the football. He's a guy that'll get you picks too. So the Illinois secondary altogether this year was full of talent. But you look at Witherspoon on the corner and him at safety, those are 2 of the studs in that secondary. And like I said, they got to steal with him. I don't know what the issue was with the safeties in this class. I mean, certain guys had certain things. We know Skinner had the injury, and that kind of pushed him down teams' boards.
Yeah.
But it was just hard to explain why the safeties were kind of taken the way they were. But he is a steal. He is a steal. There's no other way to describe it. It's just a steal.
It was interesting, not to keep, but hopefully my last Eagles point of the night. But just knowing going into the draft, one of the key free agents they lost was maybe their MVP last year. He led the league in interceptions. Gardner Johnson. Mm-hmm. He was on a 1-year deal last year for the Eagles. I mean, the guy had like 8 interceptions. Every time there was a fourth quarter tie, this guy was coming up with an 80-yard return, and then he left to the Saints. So I was surprised, man. I mean, we'll see. It sounds like Jones could be a real star.
He's going to come in. He fits the scheme, right? So he could do a lot of the things Chauncey Gardner-Johnson did. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson could drop down and play in the slot. It takes a lot of pressure off of Maddox, especially with you got extra corners too. Yep. You got Ringo, so
slot corner.
You have a lot of things coming in this draft class that are going to help you defensively. He's one of the ones that's going to help you immensely because of what he does at the safety position. So.
I saw something, Jeff, real quick before we got on here. Todd McShay at ESPN has Caleb Williams, a quarterback out of USC, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Ooh.
I don't know how that's going to work. I'm guessing they're guessing that the Bucs are going to be near the bottom as far as wins this year. They're going to be high in the draft. But I did see something right before I came on that they were talking about. It's a better quarterback class coming out next year, right, than it was this year with Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud and all them. Is the quarterback class stronger coming out in the 2023 would be the 2023 season, the 2024 draft? Does that make sense, or is it? Or are they just
have a lot of questions about this class?
Okay,
so I think there's a lot more as far as first round guarantees. They expect Williams to be who he is. A lot of people like Michael Penix from Washington. So there's a couple of guys everybody has pegged.
I love him.
Yeah, a couple of guys they have pegged as first-round grades for next year. I think what you're looking at is this class had a lot of quarterbacks that were in that middle group that are either going to be long-term backups or potentially, gap starters, guys that come in. They sit on the bench a couple of years and they replace a veteran for a couple of years to get a younger quarterback in there that's going to be dynamic. So there was a lot more of those guys in this class. So it was really thick in the middle. Not as much at the top of the board. A lot of times you get that top-heavy board. You get that group at the top, and then there's a huge fall-off before you start to get to that group. So I think this year you had a lot of guys. There were questions about them all. You had the top 2, which are Young and Stroud, who graded out evenly on my board. They were literally same grade. And then, like I said, you had Hendon Hooker, who graded high with a lot of people, but because of the injury, you look at it, it's a different situation. Will Levis, there are people that had high, people that low. We see that teams didn't have him as high as some of the analysts did, right? So that we always have a quarterback in every class that's like that. We like them more than the teams like them. So Will Levis was that guy this year.
Did you,
and then, of course, Richardson. What was that?
Jeff, I'm sorry, man. You're touching on some cool points. I was tardy. I was a little late before, so I'm like
That's
chomping
right.
at the bit. Maybe playing a little catch up. It's all good.
No
Hopefully you
problem.
can bear with me. No, I mean, you made a great point, man, and I think a lot of people won't even admit that. Oh, this is the number one guy. No, it's such a crap. It really is. If there was a blueprint where every team can nail the draft, there'd be a lot less parity and a lot less people getting fired in the NFL. Did you? So you said there was a lot. You had a lot of positive stuff. I don't think you were going to bash either one, but so you didn't see much of a difference between Bryce Young and Stroud? Because I didn't either. I love Stroud too. Stroud's bigger with a bigger arm.
They grade very similar. Because if you look at it, athleticism is also part of your grading, and Bryce Young is an amazing athlete, right? Stroud's a good athlete, but he's a more rounded quarterback. Bryce Young is that athletic quarterback who's going to give you a lot more creative stuff. CJ Stroud likes to play within the system. Bryce Young likes to expand the system. So when you look at Carolina, I felt that they wanted a guy that's going to expand the system, the guy that's going to be able to make up for a bad offensive line, or inconsistency on offense, and break things down with the receiving core that's still kind of coming together. So I think what they did in Carolina is
hit something.
Yeah, so take the guy that's going to create as opposed to the guy that's going to be system. And then right after that, the next year, Texans say, well, we're going to take the best quarterback. And the best quarterback is C.J. Stroud. Since Bryce Young's off the board, C.J. Stroud's our guy. He can come in. He can learn the system. They like pocket passers. They have two of them there. Right? If he comes to fruition early, he's already better than both of those guys. Because I know a lot of people still have hope for the kid out of Stanford that played there. I didn't see him as a starting quarterback. So I've never had that intention for him when I've evaluated him saying this guy's a starter. I felt he would have been maybe a bridge starter at best, maybe a good backup, because you never saw it at Stanford. He was too in and out of the lineup injured. And when he was in there, he was inconsistent. And you saw it when he got there in Houston and he finally started playing inconsistent. So granted, it's a bad team. But there were some throws you just go, wow. And it wasn't even the same zip code. I think that Houston had to make that move. I know people were saying, well, if they don't, that they take them, if they decide to go pass rush instead. Well, they did both, right? They traded back up to 3, and they did both. They went quarterback and they got the pass rusher. So kudos to them for doing that. You pleased both sides of the fence there. So I think that's what they had to do. They had to really, if they're going to make the spark, it had to be doing something like that. It wasn't going to be skipping out on the quarterback for the pass rusher, thinking you're going to come back and circle around the wagons with that quarterback again later. He would have been gone by the time you tried to pull back up again. So by taking the quarterback first, it allows you to jump back up for the pass russer.
Well, I think a lot of it.
I really agree. Brad,
go ahead. I was going to say a lot of the draft experts had Levis going to Houston. That's where they thought. They thought that that's where he would go. That's where who would pick him, take a shot at him would be the Houston Texans. And then when they drafted C.J. Stroud and then moved back up, got their defense, like, oh, okay, well, maybe Houston didn't make that mistake. They didn't fall into that trap that everybody thought they were going to fall into.
Yeah, that was the quarterback that a lot of people had a higher grade in the media than the NFL teams did. And there's proof he fell out in the first round. He went early day 2. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes the board has a way of working itself out. Sometimes you have a question why a guy's falling. Like Aaron Rodgers, why did he fall? There's still a question to this day. Nobody knows why Aaron Rodgers fell that far. We know why Will Levis fell that far. Yeah. They just didn't feel as good about him. We talked about 3 first-round quarterbacks last year. Of course, the only one was drafted by Pittsburgh, okay, because he's the only one that anybody believed was a starter day 1. So, and he turned out to do exactly that. So he came out, he didn't start right away, but he took the job from Trubisky, never gave it back. So kudos to Pittsburgh for understanding their quarterback room, evaluating the position properly, and taking a guy that they believe is setting him up for success. going forward. The 31 teams that picked in the first round saying, we're going to take the quarterbacks we really like, and teams that could have used another quarterback saying, yeah, like them in the first round. Let's go take somebody that's going to help us right now.
Nice. And Brad, the reason I was trying to get in there quick with to kind of build on a good quick point that Jeff made. There's always right. It was incredible. The Texans somehow moved right back in and took an elite defender. Now the thing that stuck out to me about that idea, and dude, I'm a defender guy. I wasn't very good, but I was a DN, whatever, in high school. But I'm always a defense guy. I'm an Eagles fan. I love defense. So, but the Texans, they've been absolutely desperate for a quarterback, especially after the whole, the roof caved in, however you want to describe it. Deshaun Watson, they've been so desperate for a quarterback. And then, DeMeco Ryans coming back home to Houston. They've had a revolving door, not only in quarterbacks. Like you said, I agree with you. I don't believe in the Stanford kid. I wish him well. He's not a starter long term. They finally have a coach from Houston. They've had a revolving door of coaches. Their one chance, I think, to really get it right now, they had to get a franchise quarterback. I don't think you can go home taking a defensive end. This isn't the year where J.J. Watt got taken, right, for the Texans. I mean, they needed a new franchise quarterback. They had to do it. Like you said, it was amazing. They got both. They got a QB and a defensive end.
And they had the draft capital to move around because they had the 2 first-round picks. They had a bunch of second-round picks. So they had plenty of draft capital to move around the board. So they did the right thing. Go get what you really need. You get 2 players that can immediately help you on both sides of the football. They're going to be linchpins in the success of your new head coach. Okay, You're giving him the things he needs to succeed. Skipping over it and staying where you were would have been a bad idea.
Yes.
You have to give him a chance. You have to give him an opportunity to succeed or else it's just another coach. They start 1-6 and then he's going, I don't have my quarterback, and then you know what I mean? It gets ugly quick. When a team is losing this consistently, there's such a short leash. The guy, the weapons he needs, now he's got his quarterback and he could have the next, JJ Watt or who knows, Reggie White. I mean, Will Richardson, transcendent defensive player. I mean, they got 2 home runs and 1.
Well, to kick back to the Steelers, you were just talking about that. They called them thieves, I think, or something like that. Mike Tomlin was in a press conference with his GM.
I love Mike. I love him.
And they were talking like, they called us thieves. Like, okay, that's what it is. And speaking of revolving doors, there's an organization that's had maybe 5 head coaches in its entire history. Yeah, like they don't fire guys. The Rooneys are a great ownership group. They trust in the guys that they hire. They don't get in. They don't get involved. They put the right people in place. And it's been great to see, everyone that's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, great Ben Roethlisberger, to, if you want to call Antonio Brown, I think before he got it hit in the head. Before them, I mean, they had great players. They were, I mean, who was their head coach? Who was their head coach before?
Bill Cowher. Bill
Cowher. Thank you. He's on CBS now as an analyst.
Jerome Bettis. They've had legends, and spokespeople, and
correct,
and some of the best personalities and most reputable people coming out of NFL circles have come from Pittsburgh, and now you see them draft. Jeff made a great point. You guys did too. I mean, you get Joey Porter somehow, second round. Hey, keep it in the family. They picked another guy that was related to someone in Pittsburgh. They tend to draft people that are related to Pittsburgh Steelers. They have a rigorous draft, protocol. But their draft. I think one of the biggest things when the scouts meet with them, the players coming in meet with like 10 or 12 Steelers too. They're part of the interview too. This guy's about to be a Steeler. And then, like you said, Mike Tomlin, there's a reason the Rooneys are good. They stay out of the way. They give the keys over to Mike Tomlin. He drives a damn good car every year. It's a winning model. Keep it on the road. Don't change the lane.
And there are organizations out there that don't. And now that
They know how to do it. They know how to
Gerald's gone, the Cowboys are one of those organizations.
Mhm.
Jerry Jones
Oh, yeah.
sticks his nose in every ounce of that football team. Not to have a GM, to watching the draft last week, seeing the draft room of every team, because they showed every team, they showed them at least one time, and to see Jerry sitting in the middle and everyone around him, he just doesn't have. And to fire Jimmy Johnson after the guy won you 2 Super Bowls is baffling beyond recognition. The fact that if he had kept Jimmy,
it's called karma. It's called karma now.
If he had kept Jimmy, how many Super Bowls would that team would have won? They would have won more than 2.
Karma's undefeated.
But he couldn't keep Jimmy because Jimmy was already leaving. That was the whole point. Was Jimmy was already leaving.
I don't know about that.
It was already. He was already looking at Miami. He was already looking at Miami.
Fair enough. But Jerry definitely pissed him off a lot.
Well, Jerry pissed him off. The problem
he pissed off a lot of people in general.
Yeah, well, Jerry and Jimmy were good friends, but they didn't really work together all that time, right? They were teammates, but they didn't work.
They just got rings.
This is the first time they worked together.
Yeah,
but they're 2 control freaks. 2 control freaks don't really work together. So what happened? They've been together 5 years. Jimmy says, "I've never stayed anywhere longer than 5 years. Whether it was Oklahoma State, whether it was Miami." So he was going to leave. He already said he already had his date circled. If you ask him, he says my date was circled when I was leaving. I knew 5 years I was out of here. And he was already looking at Miami. The worst thing that they did was let him go on vacation to Miami, where he got to go fishing out there, and he fell in love with Miami. So what is he now? Miami. And so
you went back home.
That was. Yeah, Jimmy loves fishing.
That's true.
Jimmy loves fishing. So you can sell him on Dallas all you want, but fishing in Miami is going to win him over every time. When he came out of that Fox booth, where did he go? Miami. When he went back the next time, Jacksonville. He stayed in Florida. He didn't leave Florida ever again. But that's what it was. He was a control freak. Jimmy had to have it his way. He wanted the locker room his way. Jerry also wanted to make money. How he made money? Well, I got to sell my team. I got to bring people with money into my locker room. Yeah. So, and he's the owner. You can't blame him for wanting to make money. So,
but at what point? When it comes to 2 control freaks, and the coaches winning rings, like
control freaks don't work together.
If I'm a really smart owner, like I might be the biggest ever. If my guy is winning rings and bringing me in billions of dollars, I'm going to let the coach do what he wants. Jerry Jones cannot help himself. He has to meddle and make himself bigger than anything. And it's absolutely just destroying the cow. I mean, Jerry Jones is the best friend of Eagles fans. We hope he lives till he's 200 years old. We hope he never leaves the NFC East.
I'll tell you one thing about Jerry.
I mean, Jerry, live forever, Jerry, please.
Jerry's one thing, I give him credit for this. As bad as Jerry was when Jimmy left, 2 things. One, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He said I could replace him with Barry Switzer and still win a Super Bowl. He did that. Actually, he's getting better. Believe it or not, they've had draft after draft that have been really good. The drafting is not there.
I think they won a playoff game recently too. Amazing.
Yeah, well, they've won a couple now, but they're not stringing. They're not stringing them together. You don't win them in the same year. You still don't go any further. But it's the problem is that their flaw comes with the veteran experience. Okay, they're great at drafting. They're great at getting guys that become their core. They're bad at mixing in veteran talent through free agency because they try to keep it economical. Okay. And what happens is you're seeing teams like the Eagles who are good at drafting, bringing in veteran guys that help build your team up, and they're willing to pay a little bit more than Dallas is. And part of that is not Jerry, that's more Steven. Jerry will spend the money and be reckless about it. Steven Jones will not. So the dynamic in Dallas is a lot of people outside of Dallas think Jerry Jones doesn't listen to Reddit. Problem is Jerry listens to a lot of people. He always has. Sometimes it's the wrong people. But he's got to go to the guys who watch that draft room. if you watch around him, you're going to see how
Oh, I
exactly.
have. It's awesome.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
it's but you could tell the power structure, right? So Jerry's always in the middle
Oh,
because
yeah.
he's the owner and the GM. You got Stephen Jones on one side, you have his head coach on the other, and next to them you're going to have the guys that run their draft. You're going to have Will McClay here, and I forget the other gentleman's name to the opposite side there. But what you're going, those are the guys that run their draft. Okay, and when they come down to it, they'll discuss the players. Sometimes he'll say, "I really want this guy. I'll take him." You know. I'll tell you a story about Jerry Jones. And you have a guy going into the Hall of Fame
I had
for
one,
Dallas.
Jeff.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the funniest thing ever though, it was a bad joke. I always try to tell it. But I mean, when I knew Jerry was the one for me, no, he was literally. It was like they were trying to put him in a straitjacket, like Silence of the Lambs. He was literally. I heard they pulled it off ESPN. No, he was yelling. He was yelling against his son. He was so livid trying to draft Johnny Manziel. You heard that story?
Yeah.
Jerry Jones still wants to draft Johnny Manziel. That's what Jerry Jones is to me up here.
Yeah,
that's it.
When he gets stuck on a pet cat like that, he'll do that. But you want to? But I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you about one of his pet cats, though. All right, so 2005 draft. Dallas has 2 draft picks in the first round, and Parcells is sitting there with him because Parcells was the head coach at the time, and the Tuna wanted with their first pick Marcus Spears, and you have Sean Merriman, Marcus Spears, and DeMarcus Ware on the board.
Wow!
And Jerry says, "No, we're going to take DeMarcus Ware." And Bill Parcells immediately writes down like this little contract. It says, "You owe me if this doesn't work out." And he's making his list of demands of what Jerry owes him. And had Bill Parcells had his way, you would have gotten Marcus Spears, and Lord knows who else would have been your other first round pick. DeMarcus Ware would not have been there. And so Jerry was right about that one. He's been right about a lot of guys in the draft. He's had some ones you go, whoa. You could tell when he's going off the reservation. The Manziel one, but also the Felix Jones pick. If you remember Felix Jones, right? He took Felix Jones in the first round
from Arkansas.
Right? Yeah, because he's an Arkansas guy.
I've caught a lot of missiles over the years from Cowboys fans. I like to give it a little bit. No, overall, I mean, I always say the Cowboys. I respect them. They always have a lot of talent.
I'm as a GM, that's what you're supposed to do.
I'm not scared, or I'm
yeah.
But every year,
as a GM,
they should be on paper. They should win. They should win 13 games. They should probably beat the Eagles or sweep them. And every year, it's like something goes wrong at the end. I also think McCarthy is not a great coach. Maybe that's another thing. I mean, there's always one little thing off with them, and they never get it done. They always have a very talented team.
They always have
something missing,
and they always have a hard time hiding it, right? So the tackle position, the right tackle, they filled it with a undrafted rookie who's played well, but he's not he's not your legitimate right tackle, and that's why they went and made changes at tackle last year. Tyron Smith, excellent tackle, has been one of their better draft picks in the last decade plus, but
home run.
Unfortunately, he's an aging veteran that can't stay healthy, but they're still relying on him. So, so there's been a lot of things where they have chinks in the armor. They have a hard time covering those up, where a lot of teams do a good job of signing a veteran here or making this move here to kind of do that. The Rams with the screw all those picks and we're going to trade and get all these guys and sign all these guys. They got them a Super Bowl. And immediately right after they got the Super Bowl, it just went. So some teams are really good at covering the warts. They can cover most, but not all.
Interesting.
And they try to cover it in the economical ways because Steven's a very cap harsh guy. Which is why a lot of their big contracts have been hard fought, because Stephen Jones is the guy negotiating the contract, and sometimes it comes down to Jerry and the player coming in and settling it, because they're going to have a hard time when Jerry's gone. I'm going to tell you that right now, because when Jerry's gone, there's going to be a lot of things that they're missing. Steven's a good dude, but he's a good businessman, but he is not what Jerry is. Jerry has the ability to identify with the players. Jerry has the ability to negotiate with the players.
He's a good figure.
And Stevens,
He's a good figure in
very
the.
harsh
He's a
when
good
it
figure
comes
in the
to
league.
negotiation.
Yeah, I didn't mean to totally, treat him like a pinata.
and
It's more like
granted-
an Eagles joke. It's an Eagles
No,
joke.
no.
No, Jerry's
No.
he's one of the best NFL figures in history.
He welcomes it.
He's got some good qualities.
he
Oh
welcomes
yeah,
it.
no, he's got no love for the Eagles. Sometimes I take shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry, all attention is good attention. even his criticism.
Yeah.
Well, he was the one that fired Tom Landry. So there you go. He started off his career firing a legendary hit, but Tom was on his way out. Jerry did the right thing by getting,
Thanks
Tom
for
was on
jumping
the
in. Thanks for
out.
backing me up too.
So he let him go.
Yeah.
He let him go, and the rest is history. But I mean,
and he set himself up for that too, because Tex Schramm was willing to take the bullet for that, and he didn't let him do it. He said, no, I'm the owner. I really should be the one to do it, because Tex Schramm wanted to fire him before he officially left, and he said, no, I'm the owner. I really should do it, and it was part of making him public enemy number one in Dallas. Mind you, the Dallas fans wanted Tom Landry going anyway, but they didn't want him going when he actually got fired.
right.
So
Right.
Yeah. No, one of my favorite lines that reminds me. This is old school. I think when Randall Cunningham, my boys Reggie White, Seth Joyner, they were playing against the Cowboys, and it was there was a lot of snow on the ground. It was after the game. And this like rookie reporter, I think from a smaller network, was like, "Hey, are you the Cowboys coach?" And Buddy Ryan, my guy, the Eagles coach, he goes, "Who?" He goes, "Are you the Cowboys coach?" He goes, "No, I'm not the Cowboys coach, but I own them."
Yeah, that's a Buddy response. Yeah.
Oh, Bounty Bowl. Yeah, bloody.
Yeah.
Who was the young defensive lineman that played with Reggie White in Philadelphia that was killed? Jerome Brown.
Jerome Brown.
Jerome Brown.
Yeah.
Number 99. Miami Hurricanes. Number 99. Wrapped around a tree. 27 years old. Jeff. I grew up with those guys. I mean, I went to Eagles training camp when I was like 8 years old. Met Randall, Reggie, Jerome out in PA. I mean,
Those are some good
Jerome
guys.
Brown was
Jerome
Brown was right before Warren Sapp. He was actually Warren's. I mean, he was a smaller tornado, and he played like he was 7 feet tall, and he was barely 6 foot.
And he was a handful.
Wrecking ball.
If you ask Nate Newton, one of the toughest players he'll ever say he played against was Jerome Brown.
Yeah,
he said Jerome Brown made him work every down. But you had that defensive line was loaded. You had Jerome Brown, you had Clyde Simmons, you had Reggie White. At one point, you had a Mike Golick on there that could actually play football.
Mike Golick.
So so you had a lot of guys on that defensive line. Behind that, you still had
Byron Evans, Seth Joyner.
Seth Joyner. Yes.
And then you had Andre Waters. Andre Waters. Eric Allen.
Eric Allen, He had a very loaded defense. So
people
they deserve.
Are the Cowboys?
The credit they have.
Jeff, are the Cowboys gonna? You think they're capable in the next? Let's face it. I mean, none of us are getting younger. In Jerry Jones, regardless of his shelf life, let's say the next 5 to 7 years, are the Cowboys winning a ring? One ring. Yes or no?
If at all.
7 years. I think every year they're close, but they just can't do it. I don't know.
The hard part, it's always something different, right? For a while, it was a legit pass rusher after DeMarcus Ware was released. Then DeMarcus Lawrence came to his emergence, but then you needed somebody opposite. They didn't have that. Then it was secondary play. You didn't have corners. They didn't have they didn't have the offensive line that they had until they finally got it. By that point, Romo was old. There was so many different pieces. Yeah, so many different pieces. Think about Tony Romo was battered and beaten by the time that line got as good as it was in 16. And by that point, Tony Romo, every hit was an injury. So it's unfortunate for him, and luckily Dak came in and was able to become what he is. Now
And
it
they built
seems
that
like
line, and now that line's breaking down. Now that
that
line's
line,
breaking down. Like
that line
no
has
one,
gotten older. You lost Frederick. Martin's still in a decent prime of his career. Tyron Smith is at the back end of his career. You're throwing a lot of younger guys in there. They've had a couple of guys that were on that line that started a couple of years ago, and Connor Williams came and went. You just had another Connor behind him that came and went. So you got younger again. So hopefully that younger line develops. But now it's the receiver position, right? You had CeeDee Lamb, you had Amari Cooper. Well, the Amari Cooper train has moved on. So now you got CeeDee Lamb, and you're hoping that Michael Gallup turns back into the player that he was before he got hurt. You're hoping that the younger receivers that they've been trying to build up. Yeah, Brandon Cooks, I think, will be all right there. But the younger guys, the kid they drafted in the 3rd round last year, you hope that he comes up because you're going to need multiple receivers. You just can't have those guys. Injuries happen, but sometimes a scheme. Sometimes they have a good scheme that shuts down those guys, and you need the other players to emerge. You saw it in Kansas City when they would take Tyreek Hill out of the game and slow down Kelsey. What happened? McCole Hardman would show up.
they got six receivers.
Yeah, those guys individually weren't great, but when you start to take the other people away and they start to make plays, you go, oh, shoot, okay, now we got to stop McCole Hardman too. Now all of a sudden Tyreek Hill opens up again. So that's what Dallas doesn't have. You saw that last year. Even if you let CeeDee Lamb go off, Gallup wasn't doing much. And when Gallup wasn't doing much, okay, then who else? Noah Brown wasn't it. They found that out the hard way, right? And they just got T.Y. Hilton in, and they barely used them in the playoffs. So they have to figure out the receiver position right now. They have to figure out. Well, they figured out the other corner position because they brought in Gilmore in the offseason. So you have Gilmore and Diggs. Yeah. They'll have their slot corners back.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So they've done certain things this year to cover up a lot of the warts. They still got to make sure now the interior defense and the linebacking core. They got to fix that because that's what hurt them in the running game. They weren't getting consistent linebacker play and the consistent defensive tackle play in the running game, and that's where they struggle.
That was stellar.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Can I go one more, Brad?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Jeff, I mean, not to, hey, let's go out there, man. I mean, hey, damn, if you ever call me conservative. No, let's go. Let's go over. I'm not saying anything, whatever. I like to think outside the box, especially as far as sports.
Mm-hmm.
Who's beating the Chiefs in the AFC next year? Super Bowl.
Ooh.
Who's getting there? Because I'm already thinking about NFC. I mean, let's go Super Bowl pick for 2 minutes. Why not?
Well, I'll tell you what. If the Bills could come out of that AFC East, and they're still going to be tough for Kansas City. They seem to have a good feel for how to beat Kansas City.
They do.
Cincinnati. Don't sleep on Cincinnati. Listen, I beat Cincinnati up last year. I said, they're never going back. That they went one time with that head coach. If they win in spite of them, they're not going back. And then they turned around and they turned around and almost went back. So I'm not going to sleep on Cincinnati anymore. I'm going to give them their due. Now they've still got some issues they need to fix. One of them being Joe Mixon. So
he's going through some things.
If you can get another running back that can give you his contribution, because I expect he'll be suspended at some point.
Surprised they didn't take a running back.
Yeah,
they do all this stuff going on, and they lost Preen. They don't have if he's not allowed to suit up, they don't have a running back. They didn't draft anyone. They lost his back count.
Yeah, they lost P. Ryan, but P. Ryan didn't leave. Sorry. But they had another young back that they drafted last year, and they got a couple of guys that, like I said, a lot of running backs fell out. Yeah, a lot of running backs fell out of the draft, so they were able to pick up a couple after the draft.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Jeff, what about the NFC East?
Right now, the NFC East is probably going to have another repeat champion for the first time since 2004, and it'll be the Eagles. Listen, this was the season where this was the off season. Everybody said the Eagles were going to get picked over in free agency. They lost a couple of guys, but they retained a lot of key guys. They had a great draft process where they replaced a lot of guys. They still had some guys on the bench that helped out last year as well. So we're going to get a lot more playing time. So overall, I think Philadelphia is still strong, one of the strongest teams in the division. I think the struggle for them is not going to be so much the players. I think it's going to be so much the fact they lost both coordinators.
Yeah,
that's going to be the biggest field. So if they
Jeff. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying, Jeff, I mean, look at that Super Bowl, and they got draft picks because of tampering. Oh, the coordinator who left, he was there for 2 years, Gannon.
Yeah,
dude, I've never seen a more vanilla, softer, more, I don't even want to say the word, it rhymes with sissy, defensive effort in my life. Watching the Super Bowl, the second half, they had Mahomes on the ropes. They didn't tackle or they didn't blitz or put Mahomes on his butt once. That guy already has bags packed. I mean, they're going to be better just by losing that coordinator next year. That's my take.
But it's the guy on the other side. The fact that he was able to rework and create the offense for your quarterback and play to his strengths. Not every offensive coordinator is very good at that. So that's one of the things. And then situationally, he was very good at calling plays and situations last year. Another thing that's not very common is you have a lot of guys that can't manage third down situations or they can't manage red zone. He was able to blend all of that. You guys moved the ball very well last year. So. And even with the defense, though, your defense was really tough all year long. So it wasn't until certain games when
I loved it.
Yeah. So those are the things. Those guys, if you can have your coordinators, the new coordinators come in and not give you that fall off, if they can come in and get the players to play the same way those guys did, But even at times last year, blitzing was kind of like
they didn't blitz. They didn't blitz in the Super Bowl.
I think that was by design.
You're facing Jordan. You're facing Michael Jordan. You're not going to pressure Michael Jordan. Like, why change your game plan up 10 in the first half, and then Mahomes, you're going to go, you know what? We're going to prevent. We're going to go what Atlanta did against the Patriots. We're going to shut down our defense. I mean, I'm sorry. And then the next day the guy leaves, and then the guy gets busted for tampering. The guy already wanted to leave. Like, I'm sorry, man. They had the most sacks in NFL history. They didn't hit Mahomes once. Mahomes had an injured ankle. Sorry, there's no excuses for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more by design.
They had that Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it was more by design that he didn't blitz because he wanted to get there with 4, because that's what beat Mahomes with Tampa Bay.
Anywhere.
Right, Tampa Bay was able to get there with 4. Now, his pass rush had gotten there with 4 all season long.
They didn't get to anyone.
So when he blitzed, it was extra. If you remember, Dallas was leading the league in sacks. They overtook Dallas. So,
right.
And
I agree.
Reddick and all of those guys that were rushing off the edges, Graham and all of them did a great job. So it just so happened that, they expected that one-on-one, they'd be able to have a lot more success against Orlando Brown. It didn't happen. Same thing with Wiley on the other side. They thought they would have a lot more success, and it didn't happen. So I think he gambled on trying to get there with 4 and playing a lot of coverage to take away Kelsey and those guys, and it just didn't work out for him. And when he did take a chance on that in the fourth quarter, and he got a holding call for it. That kind of lost you the game. So
that was I think that was a regular base defense. That wasn't that was playing deep. I mean, when you're getting beat by Mahomes late like that, don't you guys? I mean, Lou and Brad and obviously Jeff. I mean, wouldn't you just at least send like something different, like maybe a cornerback blitz? I mean, I'm sitting back looking like the most vanilla conservative defense I've ever seen, and Mahomes just drilling 5 new ones every play. I'm like, can someone change something? I don't know. I've never seen that from a defense in the Super Bowl. Just laying down, basically.
Yeah, if the guy is good at beating defense blitzes like Mahomes can do, you got to be a little measured about it, because if you just blitz him to death, unless that blitz is getting home and getting there quickly, he's going to hurt you. because then those
But-
runs that he was sneaking out on go really, really big.
But I mean, hide it. Send someone like
Yeah.
stay that, vanilla, and then like on a 2nd and 10, blitz a corner. Don't stay in the same defense as they scored. They scored every single possession in the second half. There's no excuse that I know of for that. They didn't even adjust.
Yeah. But what really
What could
hurt
have
you
been?
wasn't
What
just
could have been?
Mahomes. It was the running game that you guys started getting beat on the ground with Pacheco. That's
Getting
really what
gashed,
opened everything
getting
up in the
gashed.
second half. Yeah,
I love
that's what really hurt you the
Pacheco, too.
most. Yeah,
Yeah.
I liked him at Rutgers. I thought he was one of those guys. I thought he should have been higher on teams' boards. He wasn't. When he went in, he took over. So I like Isaiah Pacheco coming out of Rutgers last year. He was one of those guys that didn't get talked about enough. Yeah,
7th round.
he didn't get talked about. He didn't get talked about enough last year. In a weaker
why did he
draft
flip out of
class.
Rutgers?
Well, he had some good film at Rutgers, but the program was down. So people some people do scout helmets, unfortunately. So you come from a bad program, they'll look at you and it happens. Listen, like I said, we just had one HBCU kid, and then all of a sudden everybody else is getting signed after the draft. And those guys are draftable players. They just, once again, they scout the helmets. Oh, they come from that school. We don't have to draft those guys. They're a huge risk. Let's take the guy from Georgia with average film. And the guy from Georgia with average film is going to be a special teams guy, while I get could have been something a little bit more for you. But you watch these guys at the Senior Bowl, Isaiah Land and Aubrey Miller. They had great Senior Bowls. They were studs at the Senior Bowl. So you watch guys, come up and you say, can they play with the FBS guys? Well, they did it, right? So the testing was off the charts. They played with the big boys. They should have been drafted. They weren't. So, but Pacheco was that because Rutgers is still on the come up as far as the program. They're still kind of revived themselves. He came up in a class that had a lot of good running backs and a lot of value backs, so he kind of got pushed down a board. That was one of those deep draft classes we talked about. So, yeah, he goes in the 7th round. When in a weaker class, he goes probably 4th round, 3rd or 4th round.
Great insight, Jeff. Thanks, man.
Anybody want to add anything else before we get off? Good. Hey, Jeff, if you want to, I see it says co-host. You want to go ahead and talk to us about that?
Yeah.
Yes, man. Yes. So I am the senior draft analyst for Team MBS Media, formerly Nuts and Bolts Sports. I have a show on there. Yeah. So I got
Jeff's old card.
I remember Nuts and Bolts.
Yes. You got it before the rebrand, unfortunately. So
I remember Nuts and Bolts. I called the show a few times.
Jeff, I'm gonna help spread the word too, man. I mean, you're priceless insight and also a really colorful, fun guy to talk to, man. I mean,
by all means, I love talking ball, man. It's one of my guilty pleasures. So we have a show, Draft Central. We just wrapped up for this year. So we just wrapped up the show last night. So we'll be back next year during the draft process, probably in January, getting ready to kick off next year's draft class. But you'll still find me around Nuts and Bolts, Team MBS Media. I do a weekly show during the season called Bucks Weekly, where I record about a half-hour show where I break down matchups every week for the Bucks. I recap last week, talk about this week's matchup. I always seem to appear on everybody's pod, so I'm around for that as well. And I got for the first time this spring, the beat writer for them for the Orlando Guardians of the XFL. So I'm around in many shapes and forms. So I keep myself busy, and I still coach high school football here in the Tampa area. So
wait a second, Jeff. Wait a second. So I'm visiting out here. I'm from Connecticut, New York area. I had Brad. Yeah, and nice, dude. I met Brad for the first time. We went to a Rays game the other night. I love it out here, man. My mom's in Sun City. I'm right outside of Tampa. What is it? Okay. Who are you coaching? You're in Tampa?
I was going to ask that same question.
I'm in Pasco. I'm in Wesley Chapel. So
Wow.
yeah. So if you look at the yellow
too.
helmet behind me, yeah, the yellow helmet behind me is Cypress Creek High School here in Wesley Chapel. So I'm an
Awesome,
analyst for them. So on game day, I'm up in the coach's box talking to both coordinators, sending down adjustments and things of that nature. So
Good for you, man. And you said you were from Connecticut, New York? Where are you from originally?
I'm from New York. I'm from the Bronx. Bronx,
Nice,
born and raised. So yeah,
Uptown.
If you look, the black helmet is the Western Connecticut Militia, where I won the New England Football League championship in 2016. So I coached about a good 6 years in Connecticut, up in the Danbury area. So yeah, I've been around the tri-state.
Put over Fairfield Prep back in the day.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I went to Mount St. Michael Academy in the Bronx. And then I attended to see the Grambling hat. I went there for a year before my daughter was born, and I left and became a dad. And I got caught up in minor league football, and that's what all the most of the memorabilia behind me is all my years as a cornerback in minor league football or as a coach. So
you got a lot of great stuff going on, man.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not
good stuff going on, man. Good for you.
I'm not a coach, but I will be the play-by-play caller for Pinellas Park High School.
Okay, all right.
County. I'll be me. Yeah, in August. I'm going to be a nervous wreck because I beat you guys. Being in front of you guys,
he's going to crush it.
You being in front of you, see, it's different because I'm looking at a computer screen.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a press box and I've been in the press box, obviously for USF games,
tell you, man.
But you're not announcing that.
Be yourself.
The one thing I was told is make sure you yell out the kid's name. The parents, their friends, they want to hear their names. So I have to work on that over it's August, September. I got to work on that for the next 5 months of coming up with studying and how to make sure that, one, you don't curse, because I guess the guy before me had an issue with that and got ousted because of that reason. Because you got to remember, you're professional. You can't curse, and it's high school too. You got to be careful with your language. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this September of calling games. I get JV and varsity, so if I mess up, it'll be the JV kids. I feel bad for them when I say that, but if I mess up, it'll be the JV kids more than it will be varsity. But that's pretty cool.
Brad. That's a pipeline. No, you're gonna crush it, man. And I know Jeff's been crushing it, man. It's just about passion and just believing in yourself. And dude, you know the game too. I mean, you have to learn about a roster. Come on, man. We've climbed bigger mountains than that. You're gonna crush it, man.
Yeah. 2 tips. If you want to practice, just throw on a game and work on calling that game on just go on YouTube, pull up any football game, whether it's Florida, whether it's USF, don't matter. It could be a pro team, and just work on calling the game while you're watching it. And then the other thing is have a really good spotter. So this way you're not fighting to find out who made the tackle. They can tell you that all you got to do is call out the kid's name based on the roster you have. You get somebody that works with you to help you out. Yeah. But you got to find the kid and watch him.
Going back.
Let the spotter do that for you. This way, all you got to do is
get some junior or senior. I was a sports writer in Connecticut and New York, so Friday Night Lights. I didn't even know numbers before. Meet some junior or senior there. Maybe never played in his life, but loves the team and sitting near the press box. Oh, that's number 4. That's my girl. That's my brother's best friend. Now you got him. Oh, I'll give you, a nice write up or something on his resume. Yeah, get a good spotter. Once he's on your team, you're priceless.
Yeah.
Get the numbers going to you. You're the voice, baby. You're the voice.
Yeah. All he has to do is tell you 9 on the tackle. Then 9. That's Mike Wilson. There you go.
You were talking about going back and watching Florida games. Listening to Mick Hubert was, amazing to hear Mick. Mick's retired now, but some of the calls, I forget if it was P. Ryan. It was Pirine against Auburn. That call where he broke to the sideline and ran 80 yards, I think. To hear the Swamp, and it was Kyle Trask was still the quarterback. It's had to be 3 years ago.
This is when Pitts and them were there. Yeah,
correct. Kyle Pitts was still there.
Oh wow!
And they set it up, and Pirine took it out on the right side. He broke a tackle, and there was not a Auburn Tiger within 30 yards of him. And Mick Hubert is just going zonkers in the booth. And he's like, it's turning into an insane asylum. And I remember, hearing him. And then we have Jim Lauk here at USF. And nothing against Jim. I love him. I respect him. Jim is not the most exciting guy to listen to on the radio. He's very Manila. He's there. The Bulls have him. He's like I said, and I forget who his spotter is, former Green Bay Packer linebacker.
Oh no, his color man is Sam Barrington.
There you go.
He does the color. He does the color for him. Sam Barrington. Yeah.
I've interviewed Sam, and I've met him a couple times in the booth at the game. And Sam is a class person, absolutely class. Nothing wrong with him at all. He's very outgoing. He'll shake your hand. He'll talk with you if you want to talk to him. But yeah, so Adam's not here tonight. But I told him, I said, so I can't be like Mick Hubert and be too crazy, but I can't be like Jim Lauk either. And Adam said the point, he goes, you don't need to be Jim. You don't need to be Mick. You need to be Brad. Yeah. He goes, find Brad. Yeah. You don't need to be those guys. You need to be yourself. Yeah. So that's what I have
part two.
I have to work on that. Yeah. I have to work on that image now for the next couple months of the weird thing of how I got to where I am now. This might sound bizarre. Growing up, I wasn't the most outgoing person. I'm much more outgoing as I've gotten older than I have in the past. I was outside by myself, throwing the ball to myself. Right. I didn't have a lot of friends. So I was the quarterback, wide receiver, whatever, but I was also the announcer. And there would be people, my neighbors, would sit and watch and hear me talk. And they said, one of these days, that's going to be you. You're going to be in the booth. So now this might be that opportunity, because I had an opportunity when I went to Gibbs. I graduated from Gibbs High School in St. Pete. I had an opportunity to be there. And again, coming out of middle school, I wasn't the most outgoing person, so I was scared. Mm-hmm. I wish if I could go back in time, I would have changed that situation, knowing what I know now, but we can't go back and change those times anyway. So I'm looking forward to it. I will say that. I'm looking forward to calling games and, being there. And I would have liked to have been calling my alma mater. I had an opportunity to call Gibbs, but their AD never got back to me. And my buddy's a coach for Pinellas Park. He's like, the job yours? I'm like, cool. So I'm a Pinellas Park Patriot.
Jeff, I don't know about you, man, but you've done some things more along the lines of what now Brad is like getting ready to really kick some ASS in. I don't know about you, man. I'm ready to hear what Brad is talking about. Like when he starts announcing these games, man, it's going to be a great part of the program too, man. I mean, we're all in that same dream. We're at different levels, and dude, I love it either way. I root for everyone. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I've done play-by-play. I'm very robotic when I do play-by-play. I'm better off as a color guy because then I just got to break down stuff. Yeah, I just got to break down stuff. Breaking down stuff is my natural thing. Just sitting there actually calling it out, and you try not to sound robotic, but you can be because you're literally going outside. It sounds like if you ever played the old school Joe Montana football when they had the sports talk.
Yes.
It was a robotic voice.
Here we go.
It's breaking outside, going deep. It's hard not to sound like that because you can't talk over the play too much. You're supposed to be talking about the
Here's
action.
the play. Here's the play.
Yeah.
It's like horses coming around the bend. Here's the play. War emblems in front. Yeah,
lined up in the eye.
You want to add some spice. But you want to add some like color and spice and funk, but you don't want to like lose the whole approach. Maybe you got some old school parents. They want to hear who's making a play. You got to kind of hit. You got to get in the best of both worlds.
Yes,
absolutely.
Lou, do you want to go hit your show before we get off?
All right. This might be of interest to you too, Jeff. I host a podcasting show. It's nationwide. It's called the Enhanced Sports Show. Now that's with an E, not with an I. Let's keep that in mind first of all, because everybody gets that confused.
Okay.
It's a live show. We handle almost everything in the world of sports. We're a live show Saturdays 4 to 6 p.m. on the East Coast. It's a toll-free number, 512-543-4662, and we cover like 5 or 6 different topics each week. From football to basketball to baseball. This week, even the Kentucky Derby. So I'm going to cover that. In addition to how would you grade your you a Giant or a Jet fan?
Neither, actually, believe it or not. I didn't like any of the New York teams when I lived up there.
Okay, well, who is your team?
He's an Eagles fan. No.
No, but I had a lot of respect for the Eagles until Buddy Ryan.
Oh, no. That's my guy. That's my unofficial father. That's my dream father.
Oh boy,
That's my dream father. Damn it.
If you look deep into the corner, you can see my team. It's the team with the star in the helmet. It's the team with the star in the helmet.
Okay. The point is though that anybody who follows, I want to know what their rate is for their draft picks for each team. So that's the important thing here. And of course, we'll discuss the NHL, NBA playoffs. We will talk a little USFL, since maybe some XFL. Get the point.
Wow.
I'm more USFL than XFL though, so we'll put it that way. So a lot of interesting features we have, I welcome all comments and questions. But even having something called the ridiculous eye of the week, where somebody does something stupid or whatnot, whether it's funny or just completely stupid to begin with. So it makes it a very interesting show. So if you got time between 4 and 6, feel free to give the show a call. The call is toll free, by the way.
Gotcha.
And it goes also on YouTube.
Oh, it's not like $9.99 a minute? That's good.
So yes. Oh. So also you can catch the show on YouTube as well. Just go to YouTube and dial in the Enhanced Sports Show.
Brad has my contact, so send me all the information because I will forget before the show is over.
Are you available on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook, but I'm mostly on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter's where I got him at, Lou.
Yeah.
I'll send him the information.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't trust Twitter. Sorry.
Anyway, with that, guys, I want to thank Jeff again for joining us. We were on here for 2 hours. That's awesome. I think that was cool that we have. Yes, Jeff, you're always welcome to the show. I'm gonna check out your show come January. And guys, I'm gonna try to record the games I do so I maybe can place them on the air. I've been talking to Jeff on Twitter. I'll send files that way too. But before I go, I want to thank everyone that joined us. My sponsors, thank you very much. All the networks that we're on. As I always say, I want to thank the men and women of our armed services and our first responders. Thank you for doing what you do, because we would not be here without you guys.
Of course.
Until then, guys, we'll be back next Thursday. Until then, everyone, stay safe out there. Be good. Peace.
Good night, folks. Okay.
One love.
Right.